So earlier today, I had this thing where I came across one of these conservative media things, conservative sites over on Facebook. And I know that's lame. I'm on Facebook, but everyone is. And one of the things that I noticed is they were talking about don't defer to experts. You need to be a free thinker. I'm kind of paraphrasing here. And that the idea that an appeal to or to defer to an expert is logically unsound as it is an appeal to authority. And I kind of took a big problem with that because if you really think about it, from my perspective, we can't all be. Well, one, I'm not going to if I need to have heart surgery, I'm not going to go to a plumber. Obviously, I'm going to go to an expert in that regard. But the second one is we defer to experts, I feel, but we defer to experts because it's simply impossible to become like masters of every profession, every single aspect to the things within our society and our culture. We can't all be doctors, lawyers, historians, educators, chefs, sewage control, plumbers, things like that. So we usually get a couple of things that we're pretty damn good at. We've got a bunch of soft skills that we apply to our life, and then we move forward from there, you know, and that we try to do our best to kind of navigate through things like media literacy, critical thinking, the like. So heuristically, we tend to kind of defer to experts because we assume that to be an expert in their field, they've gone and met some kind of criteria that is satisfactory and substantive to their field of mastery or focus, right? And so this one guy, he responded to me and he said, there are all these people to appeal to or to defer to experts is nothing but an appeal to authority, and that's logically fallacious, which he's right about on its face. But the problem is that I think that in the society, it's simply the matter of okay, we don't defer to an expert, then we're leaning heavily upon personal incredulity, which is in itself a logical fallacy, meaning that I cannot believe that it would be this way because I believe that it is this way. I cannot believe A because I believe B. And if you're doing that, then it leads directly into confirmation bias. So the expertise or the media that you're going to ingest is simply going to be what you're already predisposed to believe in the first place, right? So it seems like you're swapping one logical fallacy for at least at a minimum two. So what do you think about that? What do you think should be done to kind of correct that?
There's so much nuance, and the powers that be, the ones who are most benefiting from the current status quo, have a tendency, whether on purpose or subconsciously, to not want things to change, which often causes things to not be able to get better. So you might have a whole bunch of doctors that have learned things the wrong way because that was what was most profitable and therefore believed to be the best way to do things. And now we're finding out maybe it's not the best way to do things. So then, if every doctor says you need to have a cast every time you have a broken bone, and new research comes out that says I don't need a cast, it's one in a million doctors that keeps up with their research. They're so inundated with insurance and all kinds of other stuff to run their business. Very, very, very few practicing doctors, especially the kind you and I are going to be able to see, the kind we have access to,
Hmm.
are going to even know that new research says you shouldn't cast a lot of broken bones that we used to think we should cast. So then you go in there trusting the doctors. Or, we're I come from a health background, as you know, and so I think of we're allowed to fix the brakes on our car. I'm allowed to fix the brakes on my 7,600 pound truck that I have to drive for work. And we we aren't allowed to trust our own research and ability to take care of our bodies, and yet we're constantly being told really, really stupid crap. So I think of the doctors here, and then I think of politicians who have much, much more incentive to lie to us for much more nefarious reasons, and we're supposed to trust the experts when something is politicized. Well, so I'm supposed to trust the experts on the environment that works for BP, or I'm supposed to trust the experts on the environment that is invested in solar panels? No, I got to do my own research. And I think that a lot of the authoritarian, like, I think what he's touching on is the way it works now, the authority is saying, "Don't do your own research. That's stupid. Let the professionals handle it." And I don't trust the professionals. I every time I get a plumber without doing my own research and finding out how plumbing works or things like that, I get screwed. I got screwed like 16 times trying to get a CPA for a small business. Got absolutely ruined one time. CPA just messed up our books all to hell. I had to know how to bookkeep to a certain extent, or I had to get a very good, strong referral from somebody I really trusted so that they had the incentive to make sure I was taken care of. It's one or the other. With doctors, if you've got a great network and you really trust your network and you can get a great doctor within your network, then that doctor might take a lot better care of you. But if that doctor sees hundreds of people on a regular basis, always busy, and you're just another person,
Mhm.
I think you owe it to yourself to find out everything you can because that's your freaking body when you're going in there. Well, we
Yeah.
owe it to ourselves to find out everything we can before we decide to vote for war or before we decide to vote for a housing
Whoa.
project that's going to affect our own environment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't trust anybody, any authority, but
Mhm.
I'm willing to listen to all of them.
Okay. So, yeah, so if you're willing to, obviously we need to trust some kinds of authorities. Like I'm not
I'll
going
trust them after I've established that they're trustworthy, at least for this particular set of facts.
perfect. So how do you go about doing that? Because if the idea is that, I mean, the way that it's set up, especially in social media circles, where you got people talking about do your research, do your research, do your research, and they say this over and over again ad nauseum. It's ridiculous. Is the idea that a layman such as myself, maybe who's like uh, whatever, the things that we do, is expected to be able to receive data, stats, figures, tests, all these kinds of things, and make absolute sense of it as though these things are in any kind of condition to be read and understood from a layman's perspective en masse. I think that I can look
There's
at,
not an easy answer to that. No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, I'm saying, I mean, I could come across like compiled data, but I'm actually the data itself when they're talking about the B.12 point BA variant of the B.12.3 variant. Like, I don't know the freaking difference between that kind of stuff. So, at some degree, I've got to kind of defer to the expertise that was even able to come up with these conclusions or even lay out a test to begin with for me to comprehend. You see what I'm saying? So there becomes like kind of a threshold of understanding from the layman through the expert. If you're going to learn things, there's going to be a system of trial and error. I mean, if we could just went off of our gut, off of intuition, what just kind of felt right, what met the pattern, then being a doctor would take 6 months, you know?
On the other hand, though, opposing that, what I'm finding to my surprise is that the general public's gut is very good and very accurate. And I didn't used to think that way, and I'd be surprised if you think that's the truth. But in my experience, people tend to vote for what behooves them. They often do it they articulate terrible reasons, but people tend to vote for what behooves them.
Yeah.
I used to think, for instance, that the Democrats voted for what would benefit the poor, stupid conservatives. And that's not at all the case. Now I realize, no, not at all. A Democrat vote is like a white collar neoliberal vote, and a conservative vote in many ways is a rural blue collar, very different life kind of a vote. And there's very good reasons that they're voting that way that we often don't understand on the
Do you
left, and
get
vice
that?
versa.
That's really the conclusion that you landed, that you
I
think that,
I I'd bet millions, yeah, and you can't understand it until you live out in a farm and work with a farmer and or that kind of stuff. But then it's different. Like we need building codes really badly in the city. Out in the country, some asshole that doesn't know how a barn works or whatever, that's a whole different like this is a terrible example, but does that make sense? Like you've got some guy in a suit coming out to check out your handiwork and make sure you're doing everything right. You can't have those kind of same building code enforcement things out in the country. You've got like a different situation or
now,
when they
yeah.
pass law.
Okay, so yeah, if you're
So
talking about good for me but not for thee kind of like mentalities, like I understand that. Like trying to legislate and like enact laws and ordinances the same for the rural counties and homes and things like that in communities. the same as you would like a huge sprawling metropolis, yeah, that's a little foolish. Like, I get it. There are different needs and
And
different
we usually
requirements.
don't do that. We
Yeah.
usually don't do that, but we do to a large extent, and the federal government tends
Mhm.
to do that more so than the local states, and I'm understanding more why, different people vote differently, and they'll say, like, "Because I don't want a bunch of immigrants," but that's not actually what they're voting for. Their gut feeling led them a certain direction that I don't think their brain can analyze very well. People on the left and the right, I'm not saying just the right. I think they tend to vote in I think people have a tendency to vote in their best interest and then not and that's following their gut and then not be able to realize or articulate why they're actually their guts leading them to vote that way. That's my conclusion based on my last few years kind of trying to figure this stuff out.
Okay, well, so what do you do about that? Like, you've got okay, so you've got an ordinance, let's say for like the vaccine mandates, right? Which I'm
Mhm.
actually kind of coming around more on the non-mandate thing. This trucker thing is getting. I kind of want to get into the trucker thing a little bit, and I think I might have a take that
We should,
I,
yeah.
I think I got a take for you that might a little kind of surprise you. But we've talked before in the past about kind of like thresholds for when things would happen, and if I remember correctly, we were both in agreement that at some kind of threshold, a mandate probably would be a good idea, like something with like a lethality rate of like 50%. We're probably like, okay, let's get these people going. They're turning into zombies or whatever kind of hypothetical situation we're talking about. That perhaps that this one, especially with COVID and specifically the Omicron, how it doesn't seem to be carrying that high of a lethality rate.
With a lot of
Whatever.
caveats, I agreed to that, as in, if vaccine technology is as good as we think it is, if this, if that, provided the government can't overstep in these ways, then yes, I would see that, yes.
Right. Okay. So yeah, that's right. That it did come with all the caveats. And crap, I'm losing my train of thought a little bit. But um I really get that, but there really has to be two modes on how we do things for like inner cities, for the suburbs, and for the rural components. Like if you've got a family of just a bunch of farmers, they're hanging around a community of 20 folks, and they're just doing la di da their day, and they're not really interacting with folks. Like to make them get stuck with stuff like that seems a little unnecessary. But if you got a metro, like the Atlanta Metroplex or any kind of metroplex of like millions of people around, and they're interacting with each other, and I mean, just a knowledge of germ theory should tell you that they're going to spread like wildfire just in like just general interactions with one another from what they touch, from what they're
Mhm.
breathing, just a proximity thing. Clearly, they're going to be able to infect a lot of people. And if you've got
And a
motherfuckers
perfect
running around,
exa
well, if you got people running around who are infecting everyone, and they're like, okay, well, I'm going to take absolutely no measures and no steps, then they just become this like running around like chaotic, plague bear. Like they're just spreading this shit everywhere. Like, no, I'm not doing any of that kind of crap. Well, it seems to me
Mhm.
you need to do one of two things. You either kind of go along with what needs to be done, or you need to remove yourself from society, of which there is a requirement and a buy-in to it. You know, now mandating those people, like I think they should get the option. Remove yourself from the general ebb and flow of society. Fine, no need to mandate them out. But if they're insistent upon that, if they're waving their COVID around and just like smacking people in the face with it with taking no measures, then well, that's kind of a problem. So what do you do with people who are just obstinately refusing to take their community safety to heart and have a meaningful impact for that? Who just believe that I'm an island in a sea of millions of other people, and I have absolutely no effect or consequence on the people around me, and I pose a danger to them. I'm just speaking hypothetically, not about COVID in particular, but just the mindset behind people who think that way. Like I need to take no precaution, and no one tells me what the fuck to do at all because I am my own man, my own island, and I can just go willingly infect whoever the fuck I want to at any given moment in time. So what do you think?
The question is so hypothetical. The problem is, again, I think the general public tends to get it right, kinda like in that I don't remember the game show, but, like, they'd be like, "Ask the audience," and the audience would vote, and the audience would always get it right even when a bunch
What
of them had no idea, you know
with
what I mean?
Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or something like that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that, yeah. I think most people kind of knew this isn't the way pandemics work, and or this isn't the way this virus is going to work. I think the general consensus was I don't need to be that worried. And I think that we are in a situation where if we have systems running the way we have systems running, we won't ever have to worry about a pandemic the way we're worried unless it is engineered. And then it's going to become less and less dangerous as time goes on.
Mhm.
What we had to worry about was older people getting it, and then over the medical community, the hospitals couldn't handle the influx. But that also
Mhm.
happened with the flu over and over again, and we keep losing our ICU beds, and we keep losing our hospitals when they're not profitable, and then we get a spike in the flu, and then old people are like waiting out in line for a bed and stuff. That happens all the time, and it's
Mhm.
not big news. And now COVID is suddenly bigger news, and yet less people are dying from the flu because more people are dying from COVID. I understand that, but that, that makes a lot of people gives a lot of people pause, and it should. People weren't that worried about COVID. Yes, there were a lot that were. They were all in tightly packed areas. Teachers and students and people that worked together in the city were much more worried about COVID than people that were out farther from the city, which makes sense as we talked about, the farther away you are from this. Like, why should a guy out
Yeah,
in
it's
his
a
farm who just deals with the other guy wear a freaking mask and get a vaccine, right?
yeah, it's a proximity
Um,
concern, and I don't think that's
right.
usually how most things happen anyway, or as far
And
as, like,
and you
perception
gotta
of
also
problems. Yeah.
right, right, and you gotta also, like, yeah, we need a succinct message from our leaders, and that succinct message can't be different from the right or the left or from the rural and the, in city and in inner city or the city, and that's a problem, and then we also Siri's like, "What did you say? Shut up, Siri." Excuse me. Um,
Yeah, it's gonna do that every
and
time
and
you say
then
"seriously," it'll pop up
yeah,
seriously.
there you that's it. That's what it was. So, then we have a situation where there were people that came forward and said, "This is not how you do a pandemic. The way you do a pandemic, especially one like this, is you vaccinate the elderly and anybody else who is high risk." And if I believe in the vaccine technology, that makes sense. And you tell everybody else how to stay as safe as possible, which is not to get vaccinated. To say as safe as to stay to be as safe as possible is to get yourself as healthy as possible. But this goes against a lot of special interests in Washington, as you may know. So we've got this situation where we're getting a lot of politicized, muddled messages. You've
Well,
got Tony Fauci saying there won't be
well,
a vaccine
let's
mandate and
hold on,
masks.
just real quick, not to interrupt you, but there have been cases where seemingly normal, healthy people have caught in
No,
COVID.
not a one. Not one. Not one. Find me one that died. No, none of them. I've looked at all of them. There was this fitness bodybuilder dude. They're like, look how fit he is. Dude does a bunch of fitness sports supplements all the time that are super, super high in sugar. He's on a massive amount of caffeine. Maybe he's on steroids, maybe he's not. Doesn't matter. But
Mhm.
he eats that fitness junk crap.
Mhm.
You know how vegans oftentimes think they're so healthy when all they do is eat vegan junk food?
Mhm.
Fitness people aren't necessarily very healthy. I mean, look at who was the famous bicyclist with the cancer that was cheating? Well,
Lance
they all were
Armstrong.
cheating, but
Well, Lance
right,
Armstrong.
he wasn't healthy.
Yeah.
He wasn't healthy. He had big time cancer, I think twice or something. Not healthy. Fitness and health are not synonymous. There have been two physically fit people the news put up, and then they put up a perfectly healthy baby. The baby was like hugely overweight and just sickly looking right from the start and had a bunch
Mhm.
of comorbidities that they didn't talk about. I called people. I did the actual journalism on this. I could not find anybody that was healthy, even the way you and I would say healthy. Every time the media said they were healthy in a way that I couldn't look at and say, no, they weren't, when I dug in, they weren't. So, no, I don't buy that. And I know that puts me out in left field where everybody else is arguing a different point,
Well,
but
no, it
I
doesn't.
contend that nobody died from this that was healthy by my
Well,
standards.
there you go. That's the thing right there, is your standard. So even like, okay,
True.
so like if in this whole, not our debate, but the debate that's going on between like the validity of COVID, how it affects people, things with comorbidities, seemingly healthy people. You're coming. It seems to me you're coming from it from a perspective of your interpretation of what you consider to be healthy, which is also a controversial and, well, not heavily controversial, clearly, but many
Not
people have many
how to
different
get
takes.
there is controversial. How to get there is controversial, and
I
everybody
can see
else's
that,
bar is
like
lower.
the
I
result of good health would net certain X, Y, and Z properties about it, but how to get there is the controversy. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and, like, nobody's gonna like, my bar's higher, but y'all's bar, like everybody else's bar, is so freaking low because of propaganda. Your bar is so low because
Oh, no,
of
my bar's low because
you've
of
been
laziness. It's just lazy and not having
I get
discipline.
that. I
Yeah,
But I do contend that if you've been taught all your life what I've learned all my life about health, it would be much harder to be lazy.
mhm,
You know, like you can know everything about a car and you don't let your car go past an oil change, no matter how lazy you are about everything else, because you just know.
yeah.
And then you can know better and know you should get the oil change, but you don't.
Unless you're
If you
my
really
kids,
knew what was happening, yeah, sure, any
then you gotta
kids.
teach them. Yeah. Mhm.
But
Teenager with a car.
I want us to be teaching in schools how to study studies, how to break down BS, how to understand what propaganda is, whether it's
Yeah.
coming from business or whatever you'd call it when it's coming from a company, how to be actually healthy, which they won't let them do because the Coca-Cola machines, the minute they start teaching kids about real health, then a bunch of kids get together and say, "Get these Coca-Cola vending machines out of here," and then Coca-Cola, they lose a bunch of money from the school loses a bunch of money.
Mhm.
There's all these different angles where I just want the truth, and it's like, well, we can't have the truth, so how should we deal with it now? I
Well,
I I, I hate,
you know that you're familiar with the concept of kind of like too big to fail, and I think kind of what I'm saying kind of plays into that. I'm not entirely talking about it, but if you like, I think, and you'll agree with me on this, is that a lot of our businesses are so intertwined, like Coca Cola, for example, or things, especially from a charitable point of view, where we've given stewardship of things like our school institutions and whatever, and our health to charity. And so the people with the money are the ones that are kind of calling the shots on that matter, right? So, like, if our
yeah.
educational system is completely, well, not dependent upon Apple donating laptops or Microsoft donating computers, or if it's Coca Cola supplying like what they consider to be a square meal for lunch or whatever. But if we pull them and we say that you no longer can do that, well, off comes the money with that as well, because we don't have the infrastructure or the finances to support those kinds of things. So what do you do? I mean, I have ideas, but what do you think we should do about it? Because if you've got a bunch of seemingly just like kind of dirt farmers who are sitting there like thinking about like health and stuff like that all the time, but there's no money to back that up as far as like or to put it
Here's what
into
we do.
society. Hmm.
I know exactly what to do, and we're doing it. We listen to the real experts. They're experts that coincide with the main talking points, and there's experts that don't. And then there's experts that have been doing it right, and that the mainstream has always said they're good, they know what's up, and then they get demonized when they go against the mainstream narrative. Those are the best experts in the world.
Yeah,
When
I
you
see.
see
I got to
somebody
push
throw
back on
away their
this
career,
mainstream thing, dude. I got to push back on this because I really think that the mainstream voice is the vocal minority
I'm
on this one.
talking media.
Yeah,
I'm
me
talking
too.
media.
Me too.
There Okay,
Absolutely.
so, like, Joe Rogan had some of the best experts in the field,
Hmm.
and he got they disagreed with how we were handling COVID. They said that the lockdowns worldwide and in this country would cause more economic damage and lead to more deaths than COVID itself would. They've been proven right. They said that cloth masks were useless. I said that cloth masks and paper masks and cheap masks that weren't N95 and N95 masks that don't fit your face well were useless. We
Hmm.
all got in trouble for that. Those are the experts talking. I mean, I like to think of myself as an expert, but I don't mean in that
I've
sense.
said
But
that,
like
and I've
those
never, I've,
experts.
I've never gotten in trouble for that. Especially like back in the
Oh,
day when I
but
thought
you
you could
didn't say
catch
it
it
on
through
a
your eye.
major platform. You didn't
Oh,
say it on a major platform. I've got an online magazine that gets censored a lot. And it's different when you go on Joe Rogan too. I mean, you and I can probably get away with a lot right here, but we get bigger, and there's a whole other ball game there. So,
mhm.
at that scale, when the experts disagree with the mainstream narrative coming out of the mainstream media, they get attacked hard and then proven right later. I'm trying to catch those experts. I think a lot of people are starting to do that too. And so
But, like, here's the thing, though, like, when it comes to, like, when people say things like you just said of, like, they used to say these things, and then they got deplatformed for it, or they got or censored for
they
it.
used to be approved as experts in their field, and then they went against the grain and then got
Yeah, but
deplatformed and or otherwise maligned.
it's not for a single statement, though. It's not because they went, "Okay, M95 masks don't work if they're,
No,
like,
no,
not form-fitting the
it's from
face."
a position. It's for yes, no, the people did get in big trouble for that.
Not on the single
What you
statement, though.
hear is
They said it for,
not
like,
on one
a
single statement.
collection of ideas of, like, "The masks don't work,
Well,
so don't even bother with this shit," or, like, they're saying, like, "The vaccines,
okay.
they're not
But
100%,
I
so don't
could
bother."
not say masks don't work on Twitter without getting a warning from Twitter. If I put
Mhm.
masks don't work, I have to put a lot of context. The cheap masks don't work. That's not enough context. If I put all the context in there and I had enough room and I got it right, I could still potentially get a strike depending on how big I was or depending on how many times I said something
Mhm.
disparaging about masks. And I should be able to be wrong too. This idea that stupid people are going to listen to the wrong stupid people. No, we need to discuss everything. We need to be open to everything. I don't want to hear some expert talk about how the other expert's wrong because of their tactics and this and that. No,
But
give me the freaking facts.
your criticism, though, is because of the platform, that's Twitter. It's impossible to have nuance on Twitter. You know what I mean?
My
Like
criticism is all the major platforms. YouTube, with my beliefs, as soon as we get into a highly politicized area that's peaking, if this podcast gets big, we're gonna get in trouble. And I hope you end up on Rumble by the time that happens.
I hope
You know,
not,
a
because then
few others.
I'm gonna get a bunch of Karens on here, like, yelling at me about how Joe Biden's a communist if I end up on Rumble, and I just don't feel like
If
dealing with that.
my views will get us in trouble if we're big.
Well,
And I would want us on multiple platforms if we get big so that, you know, if one
I'm
shoots
fine,
us
man.
down, the other one might back us up.
You give content for
And
sure, but, like, seriously, though, when you're talking like, okay, the mask thing alone, just the urine test, the pee your pants test alone says that to at least some degree, even a freaking paper mask or a claw mask is going to do something of benefit. Now, I understand what you're saying when you're saying, like, the masks don't work, like, I get it, because you're talking about, like, an
yeah, but I gotta stop
all-encompassing
you on the
thing.
premise though. The premise, okay, so here's the problem. When you're walking side by side with people in a grocery store, you're going shopping with your neighbor and you're in a grocery store and you're wearing one of those masks. The problem is that you're breathing out the side of your face
Mhm.
and everybody else is breathing in the side of their face. Does that make sense when it's not form fitting?
No, no, I
So
totally get what you're
it can
saying.
actually do more harm than good.
I
It
get
can do more harm.
I
Okay, all
totally
right,
get
just
what you're
making
saying. What I'm saying is,
all
though,
right.
if you go on Twitter and you just say, like, "Cloth mask, paper mask, these things don't work," stop. Well, that's not true, because they do, right? So, like,
They
if
make things worse, so they don't. I'm saying they don't. Yeah, you said that cloth masks do provide some benefit. I'm saying no, they make things worse. They provide a false sense of security and they breathe out sideways, which depending on the situation, but in most public situations, it's actually work. Like you can
okay,
avoid face to
I'm
face.
gonna need an explanation of how breathing out sideways through, like, the gaps in the sides of your
So
mask,
so
how that
take a match, take a book of matches, put a mask on, and just start breathing heavily, like. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And see where the match gets blown out.
Are you saying that
Does that make sense?
it gets concentrated at, like, the side venting of
On
the
the
mask?
sides, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and so this poses a huge problem when you're at a stadium, for instance,
Mhm,
or when you're walking with somebody grocery shopping, walking by other people.
mhm.
And you've got this false sense of security when in fact if you were worried about a virus and weren't wearing a stupid ill-fitting cloth mask but you know you're not wearing anything,
Okay.
you might be a little more careful as to when you breathe through your nose and or when you don't necessarily like breathe close to somebody and don't breathe in there,
Sweet,
you know,
okay.
like
So
and same for vaccines. The vaccines
whoa,
cause the
whoa, whoa,
same
well,
problem.
let's just stay on the mask
Okay,
real
let's
quick,
stay on the
okay?
mask. All right, you're
So,
right.
okay, so you're fine, okay. So let's just say for the sake of argument, I agree with you on the mask thing about an ill-fitting mask actually leads to a concentrated expression of aerosol particulates of your saliva stream and lead to more
Go in a
contagion.
direction you're not even aware of to
Right.
where
Okay.
people are just yeah,
So now
okay.
my question is for people who believe this, okay, and let's just say that I believe it too. Why is it that they will go on Twitter and then say masks don't work instead of saying what's really the concern, which is an ill-fitting mask or an incomplete enclosure of your face is actually the problem. But they don't do that. They just say masks don't
Yeah, they
work.
do. Yeah, no, no, no. Here's what happens. Guys say that with all kinds of nuance and nobody listens over and over and over again. And then somebody
I
else
sure as
and
fuck
or they
don't
try
see
it
it.
in the
I don't
but
see that at
I
all.
I no, you never see my post when I talk like that.
Well, but the
You
thing is,
nobody sees
I'm
my
hearing
on Facebook.
that's
Hold on,
you.
hold on, hold on. On fa I'm trying to give you a real world example, but I'm telling you the way it really works. So, but
Okay.
real world example of what I have lived through myself. You and nobody else gets my nuancy posts where I really get into stuff. You don't. But if I say
Hey,
masks
man,
don't
I make an
work,
effort.
and then I
I
started
make an effort. I
no,
join you.
it's not you, dude, it's the algorithm, it's not
Oh,
you.
I
You
see.
don't
Okay.
get the you don't even see the post
Okay.
if they're not inflammatory. If you go on Twitter and you say, "The thing about
Mhm.
the mask is blah, 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 blah," it doesn't travel.
Mhm.
But if you say, "Masks don't work, ask me why," or start a conversation, it travels,
We're
and
calling you.
that's in part maybe it's yeah, useless, or maybe it's human nature, maybe it's the algorithm, maybe it's both. But these guys that like the scientists, the ones I like that went on Joe Rogan, they were like that, all nuanced, tons and tons of like dry information that you really have to slog through if you don't get this stuff. I'm into it because it's health stuff, but
So,
the
okay.
doctors
So,
out
like
here.
what you're saying, okay. So, like, if it's a thing where, because, okay, so we're talking about the algorithm. Let's move on a little bit to that. So, if it's an instance where I'm not seeing you give your nuance, right? Excuse me. You know, I'm not seeing you give your nuance on it. But what I am seeing is a shit ton of people talking about this is tyranny, this is face diapers, this is these kids at school, they won't learn body language and expressions and they're going to be crippled for life with social anxiety. I hear all this kind of shit about it, right? And then that's what the algorithm takes. And then I hear a guy on Joe Rogan that's talking about how like none of this kind of shit's effective, and that plays right into what I've already been hearing en masse from people who just simply had no nuance with it whatsoever. They just say like, "Hey, yeah, this is stupid. This is tyranny. This is a face diaper. This is dumb. This doesn't work." You know, that's what you hear. And so if that it becomes the mainstream narrative, which it is, very
It
much so.
always gets like that for the same reason that the president can say something to the left and the right. They gotta put it in one neat package. That's part of the problem. It always ends up disseminating into that. But and then the media cuts out what the guy said in the most like uncontextual part and just makes it sound like he's just saying that masks are stupid and anybody that wears them are stupid. And then you've got that case where everybody, I think, is starting to figure out the reality of it, but they don't know why. They don't understand the nuance, but they do know masks are stupid, and they are stupid. Well, this is not a virus we should have masked up for. If you were old, elderly, if you were at high risk, you should probably be wearing a mask anyways and get yourself healthier. But kids, they're masking kids
I
in
do.
school still. It's not okay. None of this is okay. And so I fully back up and appreciate those idiots that called him chin diaper or what, however you put all those
Face
things they said
diapers,
that
yeah.
was stupid. Yeah, they might all
So
be stupid
do
people,
you
but I
also think
back
that it's
they're
a
on the
that
right side.
do you think that this is a pro-Muslim movement to wear masks on your face
No,
and it's Sharia law?
no, and there's always going to be people that take stuff too far, whether they're on the right side or they're not.
Okay,
But
well,
no,
at least I brought you back from that cliff. Okay, so it's not that.
I'm not there.
All right, you've got kids, I've got kids. How many times you got to take? Hey, cover your cough, cover your sneeze. Do you have to say that to them? Did you ever have to
No,
say it to
because
them?
I don't get sick, but I get it. So let's
But
pretend then
you
I would
see other
it would
kids
be
doing that.
constant.
You see other kids
Yeah,
doing that kind
sure.
of thing, right? And you can assume in a
Yeah.
public school setting that that's probably going on, right? That's not really a
Yeah,
big
but
leap.
they don't get COVID, they don't spread COVID, we have the proof of that, I was saying that from the very beginning that the likelihood of the viruses going to kids is so
They're getting it.
unlikely that it
They're
no, they're
getting it.
not, that's Okay, so we need to figure out a way to be able to show each other articles in real time with this kind of thing, but no, they are not. They're not getting it, and the very few that are, the very few exceptions, aren't getting sick from it. They're not dying from it, and they don't
Oh, it's not
spread it
about that.
because they
It's not about
they
that.
don't spread it. They don't spread it. If they do get it and test positive for it, they don't spread it. Plus the testing, and this is something that YouTube says we can't say, but the tests are not accurate. You're blowing up the scale they use to measure the virus when they look at it under a microscope and they blow it up. I don't know the terminology real well, but the tests are too many positives.
Mhm.
So the tests aren't accurate. So if the tests are like 1.3% not accurate. How many kids are getting tested that say they have COVID when they don't? And having COVID, you can have a coronavirus COVID-19 molecule in your body and not have COVID. You have to have a certain amount, if that makes sense.
Oh, so you're
Because you
talking
got
about
all
like a
kinds of stuff.
like a flat out infection of it, not just like
Not
there. Is that
even
what you're
that, like
saying?
you can have one of anything or a few of anything and not have the infection. So even I'm not just talking about like flat out being infected. I mean, if I breathe in a COVID-19 molecule or 100 or 1,000, that doesn't make me get COVID, even though it's in my body. It has to set up shop. And if it sets up shop, that doesn't mean I get sick. That's
It's
another
kind of a
ballgame.
just a quick digression though. I've always been interested in taking I think they refer to them as a tither test. Have you heard of this?
No,
It's supposed to be like an exploratory test to see exactly the amount of antibodies you've got running in your body to fight off a whole host of things that are naturally found within our environment that have like little effect on us. So like things
I
that
would
we
be
just
very
like,
interested in that test.
yeah, I am too. I'm kind of like, exactly what is my body fighting? And I'm completely unaware of it at any given time. I really want to take one of those kind of tests. Like, I get what you mean about, because like I could have I have polio running in me right now, measles, things like that, but my body fights it off, so it's a non-issue. And like,
Yeah,
I
we
get
get
that.
stuff all the time, and
Right.
we have to get it. This is what a lot of people don't get. You have to get enough of the COVID virus to get sick at one time, and your body has to be in a position to get sick. Um, the COVID has to be able to attach. You know, this is really getting into complicated biology that I would love to talk to for hours, but I wouldn't be able to stop, so
I
I
can't
shouldn't
talk
go
to you
any
about this
farther. But
because I think we could both agree that neither one of us are doctors, neither one of us are any of the things that to speak with any authority on
I
this matter whatsoever.
halfway agree. I halfway agree. I'm halfway not a doctor. I
Well,
am in
I'm
the
not.
health.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
certainly not.
But
So that's why I'm kind of attacking this more from like a philosophical kind of basis when we're talking
this is
about.
the kind of stuff we need to know, and we they don't want us knowing this kind of stuff.
But I
They
need.
don't want
Here's the thing: anyone, including myself, that's listening to you, needs some kind of verification that what you're saying is actually fucking true. And the thing
I
is
get
that
that.
I'm not in a position to really, with any authority, evaluate what you're saying,
No, you
like with all the
misunderstand
new
me though.
ones. Okay.
I'm not saying we need to get into it. I'm saying this is the kind of stuff they need to teach you in school. This is the kind of stuff that everybody should know. I'm not saying we need to dive into it right
No, no,
now.
no,
It's
no,
not
no,
the right
no. Yeah,
time.
no. I was
But
on your path. What I'm
this is
saying
the
is,
kind of okay.
let's say that like you've got your finger on the pulse for what truth is concerning health, concerning the virus, concerning all these things. That you've got it there. It's on, locked away. Bam, it's
I
right there.
believe that is my area of expertise.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So why should we listen to you?
That's a long answer, and I think it derails from the subject. And that I do agree that we should get into later. But
Okay.
briefly, I would say that I have the real world practice and experience, and I am hamstrung a bit with what I can say because much of what I did is and was illegal.
Hmm. Wait,
Um,
wait, wait.
but
With health things or just
yes,
general breaking of the law? What do you mean?
with health things like
You were doing illegal healthy
if
activity. I just want to make sure I
if
understand that.
I recommend that you stop taking a prescription drug
Hmm.
and start doing things differently, and you pay me, then
Oh,
I'm
I see.
breaking the law. That
Okay.
makes
I
sense?
see. Okay.
And there's a 100 others in that case, and, I'm actually safer not being a doctor. I know doctors that have disappeared. I know doctors that have lost their practice, lost their license, that were doing things my way. And I'm actually safer not being a doctor with the way I've set up things. But
Mm.
I do contend if I were to be comfortable getting into it and figure out how I can get it. And this is part of the reason when you said, do you want to promote your magazine? I said, no, not yet. I don't know the safest way to do this. And I don't want this to be that crackpot show where you have that crackpot natural health dude on here. Cause I want to talk about everything and I don't want to be dismissed as the natural health
Right.
um, crackpot. To not be dismissed as a natural health guy, I would need to really get into this stuff and build a foundation of knowledge to our audience so that they can then trust me. And that would take so much time that we would then have a very different subject matter on our hands that you're not even at all aware of or very interested in, you know?
Mhm.
But I do what I stand for, and this touches on what you're talking about. I went to college.
Mhm.
I didn't like what I saw. I'm so anti-institution. I'm so anti-authority. You know that about me. I couldn't stand it. I kept arguing with the teachers, especially the ones anything to do with health and how the body works. And I left and I learned on my own. And my whole message, while my family and all the well-meaning people in my life are like, why don't you go back to college and get that degree? You've already got this stuff figured out. I'll bet you could do it pretty easily compared to other people. And da da da. I want to let people know you don't need a degree to understand this the way I understand it.
Mhm.
And I want to figure that out with other stuff. And I'm trying to teach my kids that right from the start so that they don't grow up thinking, shit, I got to relearn this.
Okay.
Shit, they lied to me about that. I'm trying to get it right in
No,
as much as I
totally.
can. And I know I'm getting some of it wrong, but I got the health stuff right. And I
So
see it in all three of my kids. And let me add one more thing.
okay.
My daughter came to my house, 340 pounds approximately, allergic to stuff.
You're talking about your older
No, that
daughter,
was
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
older
yeah.
daughter at age 18. We hadn't seen each other in over 15 years, which we
Yeah.
should get into sometime. She comes to my house, she moves in with me. She's heavy, she's got terrible anxiety and depression. And there's people that get anxious and there's people that have anxiety. When you have anxiety, if you're in the hood and you hear a gunshot, your body starts shaking and you can't talk. If
Mhm.
if you're in an intense situation where you've got to talk to somebody and you're nervous about what you have to say, your throat starts getting like and you can't, like, you get this
Yeah, I get
slime
you.
and your stomach gets the butterfly, like real anxiety, debilitated anxiety.
Got you.
And she had been on a lot of antibiotics and a lot of other prescription meds at various points and times in her life. And she was headed down a road that you can imagine. If I'm wrong about masks,
Mhm.
or if I'm wrong about vaccines, or if I'm wrong about something,
Mhm.
what I do know is my kids don't get sick. And my oldest kid, who I lost touch with for over a decade, comes to me and says, help, fix me. And I taught her how to do it.
And she was sick, and now
Even if
she's
I
better,
didn't,
right?
she's not just better, she's healthier than anybody she knows by far.
That's awesome.
By far. She doesn't get sick anymore, you know?
So
And so I at least know something that very few other people know, because I hear them like, yeah, we eat pretty healthy and stuff. No, that's not that healthy. So I am on another level, but what I'm saying is true. It's extreme, but it's true. And if I get a few things wrong, overall health, I know I'm not going to get coronavirus and get sick. I know that. And I want
mhm.
everybody else to know there is another way, even if it seems radical,
Do you test, by the
even if
way?
it seems like, have I taken a COVID test?
Yeah.
I tried 3 times and there's always been issues with it. They weren't easy, and I'm gonna try again. I want to see if I can do the antibody test, but the antibodies fade after a while, and the T cell memory is what's most important. And I don't know if we're testing for that yet. I need to look into that.
So just for the
I hung
record
around with people. I tried to get it many times, like
so just
chickenpox. I
just
was
for the
trying to
record,
get it.
though, you've actually don't know if you've ever contracted COVID and were asymptomatic. I'm just for the record.
Correct. For
Okay.
the record, I have found people that tested positive and hung out with them for hours trying to get it to see what would happen, because I like
Did
to
you
experiment on myself. People think that's crazy, but that's how I learned about health. I used to
It's just a
crash at
very
our
weird
Thomas.
strategy. It's a very weird
Yeah, but
strategy.
that's what scientists do. That's what they do. And I
Usually they
did it
don't
on
do
my
it to
body,
themselves.
you know?
Usually they
I
don't do
know
it
they don't, but
themselves.
how the hell else are you going to do it? You're going to like mangle animals stuff. I didn't know how else to do it. I did it to my body. I started with dogs, but I would adopt sick dogs. And then I made friends with this person at a kennel that was putting down dogs, and I'd take the sickest, nastiest, meanest dog and rehabilitate it physically and mentally, emotionally. And then eventually
It's
people
very
started
humane.
asking me, I kind of hated humans and needed something to do at the time, but eventually people started asking me health stuff. I was one of those guys that were like, I don't like humans, but dogs are awesome, pets are, but animals are cool. I'm not that way anymore. I'm much more of a humanitarian today. But people started asking me health stuff because they saw what I was doing, and then I ended up getting accused of a crime I didn't commit and going to jail and then prison. And when I got out, I was like, I gotta, do my own thing. And what do I know about? And that's how Organic Lifestyle Magazine started. And I started working with dogs and slowly but surely people. And then people just kept coming to me. What do I do about this? What do I do about that?
So to kind of bring it full circle to what I'm talking about, as far as like, so you would consider yourself an expert on this, on like health, personal health, right? And how
Yes.
like your methods and your philosophy, your worldview on like personal health, eating, things like that, regimens, diets, whatever, right, will put you in a position where you will not contract COVID. That's the
That is
claim
my
that you're
belief.
making. Okay.
And I know that that's crazy to almost
No, no, no.
everybody
It's not
else. And
crazy at all. Like,
but
okay.
it would be to most people, I think, that you think you can be so healthy that you can't get a
Well,
virus.
no, no. I just
Yes, I do.
here's the thing, though. Okay, so how am I supposed to take, or like, let's just say, like the people, the social media masses, right? How are they
Mhm.
supposed to determine that everything that you just explained to me through a tweet, it makes you an expert on that, or everything that you just said? Like, how is one to go through and chronicle the data and verify everything that you just said to then go, okay, yeah, he is an expert? How would someone do that?
People do this. Hold on, let me screw in my mic. I apologize if this makes noise.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
People do
Flip it
this.
around, by the way. You got some blue light shining into the camera. There you go.
Ah, yeah. Okay. People do this.
Hmm.
And this is what I love about the internet. This is what's been amazing is somebody says something and then a bunch of people start chiming in and it's a dog pile and there's a whole lot of wrong and a whole lot of woke stupidity and a whole lot of crap. But there are also guys dissecting and spitting out the facts and
Hmm.
showing you the proof,
Hmm.
and it's amazing. And I'm looking at that. So what a guy does with me is first they go look at my magazine. And they're going to have preconceived notions, but hopefully somebody who doesn't lean one way or the other and is just open-minded starts looking through my magazine and starts reading stuff, and then they start seeing some stuff they agree with and or they don't, and they start choosing for themselves whether or not I'm worthy of listening to more, and then they can look up more stuff about me. But I have been hiding and kind of keeping a low profile with this for so long that
Hmm.
I wouldn't sit there and look at me and think this is the guy to trust. I wouldn't sit there and look at me and think this is the guy that knows everything. And I'm not living a life of perfect health and saying, hey, I sell health products. Look at me. This is what I do. Look at how healthy I am. I fucked with myself so much. I experimented with myself so much.
Hmm.
I don't even want to be that poster child. And I've kind of moved on from that. And I still want to help people with health, but I'm not like trying to get new clients to health coach or trying to write the best articles or like I'm not really even in that lifestyle anymore. But if it's somebody like what's any one of the doctors, I'm so bad with names and I got to get better at that for this
Malone,
podcast. But like,
McCullough, whatever.
yeah,
Hmm.
okay, so Malone, perfect. You look at what he said and what he did, and you look at how he was received in the past and for what, and you look at all the context.
Hmm.
And if you don't know anything about what he's saying now and you've got no way to like decipher whether or not he's full of crap, you just look at the past and you think to yourself, okay, so why is he in trouble now? Why is this controversial now? And you follow the money.
Well, it's two reasons. One is
Um,
the other guy that he always touts as being an expert in the field, who is also at the same complete AIDS denier. So that's kind of part of the reason why people kind of go against Malone. What was the other guy? Was it McCullough or something? Fuck, I always forget this guy's name. Too many doctors. But when you got a guy who's like working on the patents of this stuff and he's working in tandem with a guy who's like, ah, AIDS doesn't really exist, or it's just a gay disease, that kind of crap. And they're like, oh, this was his
there's
buddy.
the,
This is who
there's
was.
okay, so that's true though.
Mhm.
Here's the thing about AIDS. The immune crash happened with the gay lifestyle, and the gay lifestyle back in the day was partying and partying and partying, and I know because I lived part of it. I've I've been in the gay arena. I've done some of the gay stuff. I've hung out with the gay people,
Well,
and
wait. Just before this goes completely off the rails, there are many heterosexuals out there who enjoy the party lifestyle that weren't.
yes, and they have immune system crashes and stuff too. But
Yeah.
at the time
But this
in
doesn't have anything to do with being gay, is what I'm trying to say. It's just like, it's just the party
at the
lifestyle.
time that AIDS was peaking in the gay community,
Hmm.
to be gay and be out there and proud of it, and or to be in the closet but still want the lifestyle, you were partying. You were partying hard.
Hmm.
And there, I would urge anybody, anybody who's listening probably thinks Kennedy's a big fat liar if they're in the, less radical than me. But I would urge anybody to read Kennedy's book, his most recent book about Fauci, because he gets into this. The testing for HIV, testing for viruses is flawed. The test for the HIV virus is flawed. Testing for viruses is extremely difficult. HIV doesn't have to lead to AIDS. It never did have to lead to AIDS. I do believe that HIV does exist. I do believe it is a real virus. And I do believe the gay community was taking such poor care of themselves, which you see in other communities right now. Go into any black hood
Hmm.
with the food deserts and see how they take care of themselves. Look at
Well, I
their
mean, hold on.
trash cans and see their breakfast, right?
I mean,
So
just for the
there are
record, like, I just need to like preface this though. Like, I don't think the virus is racially discriminate or like sexually
sure,
has
not at
like
all,
sexual preferences or racial preferences. I
but
think
it
it's the
will hit
class
any
issue.
virus will hit the hood. Yeah, there you go. Bingo.
Hmm.
Now, the interesting thing about HIV is you've got the kind of sex with the gay community that's going to be rougher and cause easier transmission supposedly than heterosexual sex, and that's what they were saying was why it ran rampant in the gay community. That was
Talking
the
about like anal
science at the
tearing.
time
Is
that
that
I
like is that what you're getting at?
right, yeah. Yeah, but my contention and in
This
my
stream's for
opinion the facts
children.
point but,
Great.
but
Okay.
my contention is that the guy, and you can see it in the movie. What was that movie with Tom Hanks? The
Philadelphia.
AIDS movie. Yeah,
Philadelphia.
those guys were all partiers. I mean, they were partying. They were partying a lot. They were partying all night. They were doing poppers. They were working during the day and partying all night. The whole not literally, but so much of the community. It's what it meant to be gay. It was part of their like long-term 10-year coming out strategy,
You
sort
have a
of,
very
in my
interesting way
opinion.
of phrasing that. I just gotta be on the record,
Yeah,
like things that might be kind of prevalent within like kind of communities, but like it's definitely it's kind of reductive to say like if you're gay, you're a partier. I just need to say this because it sounds a little weird, just for the record.
and a lot of what I say is going to sound a little weird, and I apologize, and I don't always phrase things the best unless I'm
Okay,
taking a lot of time writing it, but
gotcha.
it was a community with a lot more partying than
Okay,
other communities.
okay.
And immune systems crashed.
Hmm.
And you don't have that within the gay community the same way today that you did. But you do we have HIV, and it's not a death sentence anymore, and that's not, in my opinion, the drugs. I
Hmm.
don't I hear of, and I hear that I'm in some of these areas where I get to hear a lot of this stuff. A lot of people that test positive for HIV just take better care of themselves and don't trust the doctors and the drugs and end up being fine. That was always the case. We just didn't know it. We overreact, and everybody who can make money off of something tries to make money off of something. And they can make, if they can make a vaccine and or they can make a drug, they're gonna do it, and that may not be the best thing for you. So yeah, he sounds radical and crazy. I sound radical and crazy too. I think that COVID exists. I think that HIV exists. I think that the truth is way, way, way more complicated than anybody knows who's not really, really looked into the science.
And now, how does your your confidence level in the layman, the consumer of media, what is your confidence level that they actually do their due diligence to sit here and listen? Let's just say, like, on the next time we do a podcast here, you go on a 2 hour exposition monologue, and you give us all the details. You bring your reference materials, you bring everything, right, and you state your case. What is your confidence in the layman, the consumer of media, to take what you're saying and do their due diligence to verify every single thing that you're discussing there. And
Low,
and
but here's what happens.
and also their ability to understand what the hell it is they're reading while verifying your information.
Low, but here's what happens.
Okay.
When enough people like me start talking like this, and I used to feel very alone, and now I got scientists and doctors that were considered very credible up
Mhm.
until recently, totally agreeing with me on a lot of past issues here. What happens is, provided we're bigger and there's, a lot of listeners, you have a few listeners that actually start putting the work in and start dissecting this stuff and start educating other people based on what they just learned, and it spreads that way. It's not like 100 people listen to us and 95% of them get it, or 80% of them get it, or even 10% of them get it. 2% of them might get it. But that is like the way a virus works, and it travels. And we always think that misinformation travels so bad. I don't think that's true. I really don't think that's true anymore. I think the truth travels way better. And these guys that will understand it and dissect it and break it down and figure it out and then spread it to other people who then spread it will create kind of a mass consciousness where people end up going with their gut feeling because they don't understand the nuance and they didn't break down anything. But now they're just kind of feeling differently about it. And more people today are realizing that if you eat right, you're less susceptible to being sick. That was not the case 15 years ago. Most people 15 years ago thought getting sick was a crapshoot, luck of the draw, DNA kind of a situation. Most people today know you get diabetes, cancer, the flu, or a cold. For some reason, COVID seems to be different to everybody, but most people know that at least everything else, getting sick has a lot to do with your health, at least. That's new, and I
You
was
mean your
pushing
health
for that.
walking into a situation? You're walking into an
I,
illness, like where you're at
mm,
health, your status health before getting like exposure to a virus or something like that. That's what you're meaning.
right, and or getting a chronic disease like diabetes or lupus or
It's never
Morgellons or
lupus.
whatever.
It's never lupus.
Agreed, but that's a whole other thing. So people that have been now people are starting to realize a lot of stuff that we didn't even know 15 years ago, that they're all acting like, well, I always knew that, but they didn't. It's just been kind of absorbed into their conscious. Like, I know I need to eat a little better. I'm more likely to get sick. We didn't know that a very short period of time ago. I
So
know because I got,
right, so they know this now because of whatever they're consuming on media
but they didn't
platforms.
come to know that hearing a guy like me talk and talk and talk.
They didn't come to
That
know it on their own.
No, it was a few guys listening to a few guys, learning from a few guys who broke down the science, and then a few guys that are listening to all that break down that science, and that starts spreading like a virus. It spreads throughout the communities and throughout online, and people start to get it. And then you'll read, and I can tell somebody something about health, and I'm like, that makes sense. Wow, mind blown. And then they have no idea what I said a day or an hour later. But if they get that same kind of information 5 other times from 5 other people in 5 other instances, they may not understand it, but now they believe it. Does
Mhm.
that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's how I think it travels. And I think the truth is stickier. I think the truth is a lot stickier because I can poke holes in the bullshit. And I personally can't really poke legitimate holes in truth. And when I see people doing it, I think it's pretty obvious. And I think there's more and more people getting better and better at this, at seeing the bullshit for what it is. And for instance, I think most people, or at least a greater majority of people than before, and maybe that's all you need, but a greater majority of people than before know that when somebody starts talking about somebody else's tactics all the time, they don't have a real solid argument. Like
About
when
like
you hear somebody
talking about like
say,
rhetoric
like
tactics, that kind of thing. Is that what you mean?
like a climate debate. If you have a climate debate and one side starts talking about how the other person is just like this and doing that kind of stuff and just saying this so y'all believe him, da da,
Are you talking
but
about
then
like
the
poisoning the
guy,
well, that kind of crap? Like hyperbolic, like ad homs, that kind of shit, ad hocs.
for instance, but there's a lot of like, give me the data, give me the science, give me the facts, debate the facts. The wrong side so often starts talking about how the other side debates and the kind of person the other side is, and the the ad hominem attacks and everything else. But they're not sticking to the freaking facts. They're just trying to tell you how screwed up the other side is for a multitude of reasons.
So,
I think most
whoa, whoa,
people are
whoa, wait, right on that point though. So you've got what you refer to as the mainstream narrative. you've said this a bunch, where you're talking about, and they're putting out their narrative about this, and they're backing it up with facts from CDC, from WHO, like that kind of stuff, right? And then you're bringing out people that run a narrative counter to that, and both sides are saying this is fact. This is how things are, right? I'm sure there's
But
people
when
listening to
I
this right now.
listen to those both sides talk
Hmm.
and they're addressing the other side's argument, the side it happens one of two ways. Either they say a lot of stuff and like, you know what, you got good points. Yeah, you got good points. I agree with some of that. I'm not sure about this. I'll have to look into it. But you know, I'm rethinking some stuff, but I still
Hmm.
do think this and that. I hear you. That's one way it goes, and then you can make up your mind, and it's not about right or wrong. It's too complicated, and that's most of the time.
Right.
But when one side is fucking wrong and in bad faith, what they're doing is, even if they not even in bad faith, so many people are arguing what they think is right and they don't realize how bought and paid for they are. But
Hmm.
when they're doing that, when they're on the wrong side, they start losing and they start just pointing out what the other side is doing tactically or what's wrong with the other side. Or I don't want to be on the side of a neo-Nazi or whatever the fuck they
Hmm.
say.
Yeah.
And they stop talking about the numbers and the statistics and the facts, and
See, that's
they'll
exactly
have a
right. That's exactly what I feel like the current anti-vax thing is doing. That they just go, money. It leads to pharma. It leads to government. It leads to big business. It leads to all of the like the media. Everyone's bought and paid
I'm
for.
talking
Trust
about
no
when
one.
professionals debate, though. I'm talking about
Hmm.
when we were talking about how do you trust the professional? Who's the professional you trust? How does the information get out into the mainstream the right way?
Hmm.
I'm talking about when professionals debate. I'm not talking about like what you hear, because whatever bubble you're in, if you're only in one bubble, you're going to hear from the other bubbles a very distorted message. Like
No.
if you're on the left, you're going to hear how crazy the right is. If you're on the pro vax, you're going to hear how crazy the anti vax is. If you're on the side of the truckers, you're going to hear how crazy whoever's not on the side of the truckers is, and vice versa. You know,
Hmm.
you're always in these bubbles. I think the key to not having this issue is talking to and listening to as many people as you can outside your bubble constantly
Hmm.
in good faith.
Which is
I
why
don't care
this
if
is
you don't like the
important.
sound of their voice. Yeah, yeah.
Stuff
I
like
don't
this
care if
is
you don't like
important.
the sound of their voice. I don't care if you don't like the look of their face. I don't care if you don't like the platform they're on. Freaking listen and decide for yourself and figure it out, and then debate your friends with it if you're passionate about it. I don't want to accept the science ever. I will never accept the science. There's no such thing as the science. Science is constantly changing, evolving, and the whole point of science is to question everything. I will never trust the authorities. I will listen to them and then choose to make up my own mind. Thank
Okay.
God we live in a free country where I don't have to get
Do
vaccinated to
you
be able
have
to
do
go
you
to a
have an
grocery store.
option besides science?
What do you mean?
Science just gives us the best model for the times that which maps onto and pretends to reality, right? We're not this isn't
Science
this
is
isn't
coming up with that model. Science is not the model. Science is the work done to create that model. Does that make sense?
oh okay, what I would say discover the model of what best portends to it, but we're not getting this through God, right? The blood of Jesus Christ is not protecting me from COVID. The answer and the solution is going to come from science. It's not going to come from
You
just like
know,
yeah.
there was one lady who Jesus Christ was protecting from COVID, and then she cracked her head open. Did you hear about that?
No.
There was a comedian that was she was we need to be able to play videos, by the way. I want to be able to share links with you and with our audience, and I
Okay.
want to be able to play
We
videos.
could totally work on that.
Um and if and I can help with the budget if need be. So we get a girl, this female comic. I try to quit calling women girls. It's a hard habit that I've been trying to break for six
I
years now.
get you.
But
I have a lot of
this
training to
woman,
undo myself, by the way, so if I slip up, apologies in advance. I'm trying to be a little better
cool.
about that.
Yeah. So this woman, she goes, I I have been vaccinated. I am proud to say, I think she was Southern. I have gotten the such and such shot, the depot shot or whatever, the this shot, the that shot. Got my COVID and 2 boosters, and haven't got COVID. And let me just say that Jesus loves me best. And everybody laughs. And then she takes a step and she falls, and she fractured her skull. And
That's a God spite me. Did I lose you?
for a second. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. It's like
Okay, good.
that was a and Jesus strike me down moment, huh? Yeah. Yeah.
So she hits the ground, and everybody laughed because they thought it was part of the skit, but it wasn't. And she was then talk on a podcast talking to a doctor, and he was, I think it was her doctor, but he said yes, unfortunately you got the vaccine 3 weeks ago. Some of these side effects are happening in 3 weeks. This is very likely a side effect of the vaccine. It is especially prevalent in people that receive the booster. There are, risks to vaccine. And then she talked about it, and they talked about vaccines, and they had a very nuanced conversation. She admitted she thought she was going to talk to her doctor, and he's going to be like, no, it wasn't the vaccines. And he was like, very could have been, especially with so many in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
And this was all over the media, but of course, I mean the alternative media. But it was very hilarious. But it's a perfect case if you've got people on the right or people on the left taking it totally differently, seeing it totally differently.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Please do check out that video. And for anybody who's listening, check it out. There are risks to vaccine, like there are risks to any and every medical procedure.
Yeah. It's a calculated risk, I think, for a lot of folks, though. I think that's where they're going to lay on it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Which is the risk
And I
versus
think
benefit.
if we have all of the info without the BS bias, I think a lot less people are going to want to take the risk.
Yeah.
But other people think it's the opposite.
Yeah. So, yeah, I kind of wanted to, again, though, when we're talking about appeals to authority, when we're talking about personal incredulity, and then confirmation bias, um, when you're talking about things like being in bubbles, echo chambers, that like. So, what do we do about breaking out of that? Because we've talked about this before, where like one of my issues with Rogan was the fact that I'm just going to platform everyone. And my position was more along the lines of like, well, he's saying, let's just platform everyone as though that everyone's got equal weight to the opinions. We had discussions about that, and your takes were different than mine. But what do we do about that in just kind of general? Because I mean, the writing's on the wall. There is a
I think we're
practically a
doing it right
50-50
now.
split, you know?
I think we keep talking. I think we keep talking and we keep talking. And I think 5, 10 years from now, maybe months, whatever, there's going to be times weeks later. Let's say, for instance, you're right about Ukraine and Russia invades Ukraine. They're not going to, but let's say they do.
There's
And
breaking
then,
news on that today, by the way. Did you hear this?
yeah, but they're not. Anyways, let's
I,
let's
I,
say
I
you're
haven't even
right
looked
about
at it. I'm
Ukraine.
getting alerts, and there's something going on with it, and that's probably what we'll talk about next time we're on here. But I think the shit just hit the fan over there. I think on this day,
L-
February 18th.
Let's say you're right about Ukraine, and eventually I have to come to terms with it. I don't think I'm too stupid to see that you're right eventually. And we have more and more
Join the
of
club.
those.
I'm just kidding. I'm fucking around.
But we have more and more of those over the course of time.
Mm-hmm.
And we take an audience with us. And more times, one of us is going to the other. We're both going to each other and going, well, you called that one.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the stuff with COVID is happening to where I called that one, and the other stuff I've been wrong about many times. I just went all in on Bitcoin at $50,000, and then it dropped to 36,000. I told everybody to buy, So
Oh
I mean,
boy.
I'm wrong all the time.
Ouch.
And I was like, how can Bitcoin drop when the dollar drops? Well, I found out after the fact, So I'm gonna be wrong, but we keep learning, we keep getting better at it with the
Mm-hmm.
dialogue, and let's keep talking and let's keep doing the reading the stuff that's hard to read and looking for stuff and pre-planning the show better and better. And we do what Joe Rogan does, and we do what everybody else does is we
Mm-hmm.
talk and talk and talk. Now there's people I don't want to talk to. Joe Rogan didn't just platform everybody. He platformed anybody he wanted to speak to.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to get to know their side. He wanted to talk to them. And people that were completely stupid got called out for being completely stupid. And I contend that a lot of people that were completely right also got called out for being completely stupid. But
Mm-hmm.
he brings them on the show and he talks to them, and then I learn why the right's saying what the right's saying and why they're coming from that perspective. And I learned why Milo Yiannopoulos or whatever his name was doing what he was doing. I wanted to hear from I wanted to hear about Whoopi and why she thought the way she thought, and I wanted to hear more nuance on that. And then I and I love the podcast that talked is Jewish being is a white Jew a white person or are they not? I want to hear those
Mhm.
conversations. I don't care if it's one guy out of 1,000 that has a view. If it's interesting, I want to hear it. I am not going to become a Nazi because somebody was persuasive with Nazism. I think we're past that point as a society. If we open up the doors and let people just talk, I think we get less of these problems, not more. And the government and the media keep pushing for less and less dialogue, less and more trust the authority. That's a slippery slope going the wrong direction in every way, every time in history. We need more of
Mhm.
what you and I are doing. And we need to accept
Well,
it when other people try to do it too.
here's
Because
the
you're
thing, though.
platforming me.
Yeah, yeah, I'm fine with platforming you though, because I'm
Thank you.
unlike Rogan. I'm going to push back on you. That's the problem.
Rogan pushes back. He just doesn't push back on the ways you might want him to push back, but he does push back all the freaking time. He pushes
Uh,
back better than anybody in the
no,
mainstream
whoa, whoa,
media.
whoa, 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 no, no.
Mainstream media, don't forget, mainstream. He pushes back better than anybody in the mainstream media.
I think we're going to have a little definitional session of what we consider to be mainstream media. But like
Have you
Joe
seen the
Rogan,
Sanjay Gupta interview?
so, well, just real quick though, but Rogan has, I think, a well earned reputation for never meeting a guest he didn't agree with across the board.
Bullshit. Total horse shit. No, he does not have that reputation. No, 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 no. He pushes back all
Who has
the
he pushed
time.
back
He does
against?
not. Every single person, at least one subject that I can think of, and oftentimes multiple subjects. He pushes back all the time. He has discussions and he calls bullshit. Now, he is not looking to argue. He's not
Oh,
inviting
that
you on his
I'll agree with you
podcast
on that
to
one. Yeah.
He's not trying to get you on here so that he can make a fool of yourself of you. People that do that don't last long in the media game. He wants to hear what you have to say. He
Yeah.
wants you to go ahead and say it. He does believe if you're a complete ass, other people are going to figure that out.
Mhm.
He asks you questions. So pushback to you might be like, "Oh, whoa, whoa, hold on. That's inaccurate." Pushback to me might be, "Okay, well, go into that more. So are you saying this and that? So to be clear, you're saying this and that. Okay, interesting." That to me is all the pushback I need. I
Mhm.
don't need him to sit there and call the guy wrong. Why would he do that's no good? And then he's not going to be able to get more interesting people because they're worried he's going to jump on him. If he absolutely knows something's wrong, he says, I think that's wrong. If he thinks something might be wrong, he says, let's dig into that. And if he thinks you're wrong headed about something, he asks you a bunch of questions.
Well, I think
And
that's
only
yeah, that's the thing though. That I think the accurate criticism about him is like, look, how you and I are doing it, but we're having a conversation right now. We're just sharing shit. This is like adjacent to just shooting the shit with one another over a fucking coffee or a
much
beer.
like what he does when he has his friends on. Yes.
Right. But the
Not the
thing
same as
is,
if we invited a guest.
yeah, but the difference is that we don't have 11 million eavesdroppers, right? He does.
So,
Well, that takes a
yeah, but he didn't
connotation.
when he started, and he's going to keep doing the same thing that's working. He didn't have 11 million when he started,
Yeah, I
and
get
he did it a certain way.
totally.
He's
I
not going
get
to quit
that.
doing the way. Okay.
Yeah, I get that. Absolutely. But there needs to be some consideration and perhaps a little bit of adjustment. The writing's on the wall. I've got 11 million eavesdroppers that have now followed me, that kind of like me, that will kind of listen or defer to me,
He
and
does
even through
talk about
polling.
it all the time.
But
What do you want
people,
him to do that he's
well,
not doing? He
what I'm saying,
does. He's
wait, just one last thing too, though, is that there is, through polling, there is data, there is these kinds of things that back this up, that say that a lot of their news media and their news information does come from Rogan. Like that is the
Yes,
source
because
for
he's more accurate. Yes, because CNN lies about everything, because MSNBC is totally full of
ah
shit, because they all wanna go
don't
to
hammer
war.
them.
He
This is
is more
them.
accurate.
Don't hammer on them,
He's
just
more
think
ac The biggest advertisers are pharmaceutical, military, and political, and most of the other advertising falls into that in some way, shape, or form with ties. All of the mainstream media is banking on that advertising revenue. It skews their perspective, if nothing else.
then why
And
isn't he
Joe
gone
Rogan,
independent?
why isn't Joe Rogan independent?
Yeah.
You mean why doesn't he just podcast out of his own website?
Yeah.
We've been pushing him to, and he says he doesn't want to, and he hasn't gotten into it. What does
Why?
that matter?
It
I
matters
th-
if he gives a
I think
company
the work
exclusive.
involved, but
I'm saying if he gives a company exclusive rights to publish his material like he did with Spotify, but Spotify gave him caveats, he could still clip out to YouTube and shit like that. That's not what I mean. But like they have exclusive rights of publishing over him. Now, Joe Rogan doesn't have to listen to anything they fucking say. Like, if he wants to just bail out and do his independent thing, he'll do it. It's just like all the guys that like bailed out of Patreon back in the day, like Sam Harris and those kind of guys. They just went independent. Said, "Fuck it. I don't have to deal with advertisers. I don't have to deal with any of this kind of thing. I just want a guaranteed revenue stream out of what this will give me." Right? But they can do it on their own. He's got enough clout. God, he better have enough saved up to be able to like start himself up and running. Right? He's got the audience will follow him. They're not people don't listen to Joe Rogan because he's on Spotify. They just come to Spotify because that's where he's at now. No matter where he goes, he'll do it.
He said the reason he took the deal in large part was he thought he would be way less famous.
What? How would he be less
Somebody
famous?
laughed and said, "Jesus, Joe, you're getting really famous." And he said, "Well, I didn't know so many people were on Spotify. I thought I'd be less famous." He goes, "You take $1 billion deal and you think you're gonna be less famous?" He goes, "Yeah, but it's not YouTube. I thought there'd be way less listeners."
Well, they're
And
gonna
I get
follow him.
that. I thought he would lose a ton of listeners. I really did. I was like, "What are you doing, Joe? Spotify? Just go to your own website. You're gonna do just as poorly." Um, I so that's interesting. Like I could see from his perspective, you might think it's crazy, but I thought he was gonna lose a massive amount of his
Why
followers.
just go independent?
He did too.
He's got 2 techs or whatever. He can hire on a little bit of a crew, pay him a decent
I think
wage.
he should, but what's your point? I feel like it's nefarious that he hasn't gone independent from your perspective. I don't
Well,
understand the point of
here's the point of what I'm saying right now. Okay, so if he wants that revenue stream coming in, if he goes independent, then what he's going to have to do is he's going to have to do a subscriber base, right? So he's going to have to do it that way for people to subscribe to his content. That will be his
he's got
revenue stream.
advertising.
Then he's got advertising. So anytime that your revenue stream is dependent upon advertisement, you have to appease them, right? Especially if he's got
No, not at
no.
this level. Not at this level. The media, when you're a corporation, that's very, very different than when you're an individual. And
That's
so
why
if
he
you're
doesn't
trying
go
to
independent though, because if he went independent, he'd need to have advertisers, or he'd need to do a subscription base.
he'd need to have more advertisers or do a subscription. I do believe that is why he doesn't go
Would
completely
you pay to
independent.
listen to Joe Rogan?
Yeah,
How much of
he's
his
one of the 5 guys that I would pay to listen to.
how much? Okay, how much of his 11.6 or whatever the hell he's at right now? How many of them do you think would pay to follow him? He doesn't need much. Granted, all he needs is 100,000 at say $5 a
He
month.
gets
He's fine.
1%, he's fine, and he
Yeah.
would at least have 1%.
Mhm.
But I don't think he's money driven for this thing. I don't think that's why he's on Spotify. I don't think that's why he moved to Spotify. I don't think that's why he does or does not do his own thing. I don't think he's money driven at all anymore.
I
He's
kind
got too much fuck you money.
I kind of agree with you actually. Sad as that is, but I do not that I agree with you, but like yeah, he's in a position like I just what I all in all, what I'm kind of getting at though is that he has to recognize, even whether it comes through advertisers, revenue streams, anything like that, that his show is at such a part that, or at it's such a place of impact that anything causes a ripple effect. It's kind of what I'm getting
He's
at.
very aware of that. What should he do
No, my
besides
God,
not?
no. There's no fucking way he's aware of that. Well, okay.
He talks about it regularly. I can give you clips. I'll have to go through them, but I can give you clips where he talks about. He goes, "Oh shit, I just phrased that wrong. That's gonna come back and bite me." Or
Well, with the
that's the
Planet of the
problem
Apes
is I want
thing,
to just
yeah.
No, no, no.
Well, he said
I'm
it on
talking
that.
about a bunch of stuff. Yeah, but I'm talking about something a few days ago. He says, "Well, we've got to consider how people are going to take this now. We've got X million listeners, so let's rephrase this carefully." He does this stuff
No,
regularly.
that's good. Cool. I mean, if he grows and he learns and like he like him
He
adapts
always
for that.
has been growing and learning, though. That's the fucking thing. Guys don't fucking watch his shit and keep thinking they know how he is. He has always been like, "Shit, I fucked up there. What should I do differently?" Always, always, always. To sit there and look back, I went through a phase where I used the N word because I had a bunch of black friends and they accepted that I used it and said it was cool and I thought it was okay. I get where he's coming from, and every single thing that everybody said is so wrong. His transphobic stuff, he's not transphobic at all. He just doesn't want women getting beat up by men. Believe it or not, that's what that whole issue was. Every single thing
We'll
you
go
pull
into
out,
that one, and then we're going to do a data tit for tat, and I'm going to show you where he
every single
absolutely
thing you say
transphobic.
about how Joe's fucked up, I see somebody who's learning and learning and learning and getting better and better and better. I see one of the nicest people in the world. I can't believe he's been able to weather all of this shit and still be as cool as he is. He's not my favorite podcaster, and I'm not a Joe bro. I just coined that phrase, I think, but
There's probably a
he's
group
one of
of
my
Joe
favorite.
Bros out there that will say that.
But he's one of my favorite people in that I see a guy who's desperately trying to live life the best way possible and trying to do good with all this shit. You see a guy who just keeps saying stupid shit. I
No, no,
don't
no.
see that.
Actually, no. Actually, I'm in agreement with you. When like, okay, so he got a lot of shit and a lot of heat for the apologies that he gave. And my initial thing, if you notice, when I was first bitching about his apology, not
Hmm.
once did I say, "Oh, this is a bullshit apology. He doesn't mean it.
Agreed. You
This
did
is
not
just a
say that.
form, right? Like, okay, oh, I fucked
Right.
up and someone's got to apologize for it. Okay, PSA moment. Kids don't do drugs. Okay, and off we go. That's not. I don't think that's what it was. The issue that I took place with is that the fact that like, for the love of God, Joe, yeah, like I get that you're a layman and I get that you want to learn, but it doesn't take a fucking rocket surgeon to figure out. Don't fuck around with the most controversial topic on fucking in America right now, which is
Oh,
COVID. And
bullshit. Bullshit. No,
how?
that's when you need to talk.
No, no,
That's
no,
the
no, no, no,
thing.
no,
They
no, no,
keep.
no. He could talk about it. What I'm saying is, how can you say with a straight face that he didn't realize COVID was a controversial subject?
He was the first one in all of the media, including the mainstream, to have what's his name? Hold on. So this is the kind of thing you don't get to see this because you don't listen to him regularly. But he was the first one to have this guest on that I totally disagree with, called Michael Osterholm, if I'm saying that right. He's an expert in infectious disease. I think he's a freaking CDC crackpot. I think he's bought and paid for. Joe had him on early on when everybody was not even worried about COVID at all, and the scientists were trying to sound the alarm, and they're like, "We don't know how bad this is going to be.
Yeah,
Shit's happening in China. Get
he
ready."
could,
He had Michael.
yeah.
Oh, hold on. He had Michael Ostrom on, who was saying, "This is going to be a pandemic. We need to buckle down. This is what's going to happen." He was the first to have him on. What the hell else is he supposed to do that he's not
No,
doing?
that's fine. Like, cool, yeah. Brogan was the vanguard for like the alternate, like COVID, did the narrative or the pushback on the COVID narrative. That's fine. He could be
No,
the
no, no, no,
vanguard
no.
on that.
He had the guy on that said COVID is serious. People are going to die. We need to pay attention. He
Oh,
was the
okay,
first to have that
okay,
guy.
okay,
He
cool.
has both sides on constantly. Every other major issue, you say, well, what about this and that? He's probably had the right people on, and then he had other people that disagree, and
I'm
then he
not
had other
sure why
people.
what this pertains to. What I'm saying, like, if a guy when he just issues an apology, like what 2 3 weeks ago, going, I don't mean to be controversial, in the midst of like the biggest controversy in America that we've seen in years. How the fuck can you come to that? You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you under a rock? Are you deaf again? Did I lose you? Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
I heard you in every way. Go ahead.
Okay. So that's what I'm saying. Like, wait, Rogan, seriously, dude. Like, you don't know, realize that
To be
offering multiple sides
what
of this is a controversy? Like, he's like, I didn't mean to
he
step
okay.
into this. Like, well, how do you
Well,
ratify that? It's the most
he
controversial topic
wants
going on right now.
he is in a bubble in that it often surprises him what happens with the mainstream. He has professionals on that talk about stuff. He gets really deep into stuff with all kinds of people. Anybody who goes against the mainstream narrative about anything big
Uh oh, I'm losing you. You there?
time to talk about it. Joe can be
Okay.
how how's that?
Okay, we just had like a lag. I think we're okay. All right, go ahead. Sorry. You were cutting
You're
in and
starting to
out.
break up on me too.
Shit.
Okay.
Says
Yeah, we're
looking like
starting
we're
to
okay.
break up.
Okay.
Okay.
Damn it. Right the good juicy shit. Here we go, breaking up. Fuck. All right. All right. You seem
Want
fine
me
to
to
me
keep
now.
trying for a minute?
Yeah, let's just keep
Yeah,
going.
you do seem better to me too. Okay. So, um my main point was that we couldn't possibly do better than Joe. I know I couldn't. I doubt you could either. If you were in Joe's position and you stumbled upon this concept with Joe, the way Joe did, I mean, you'd be in so much trouble so often. So would I. He's handled it brilliantly. Um, he has on all the people. when you say, well, he doesn't have enough people that are right, he has podcast after podcast after podcast after podcast of people that I don't agree with, but they're totally mainstream, saying all the mainstream shit all the fucking time.
Mhm.
He has tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of podcasts that aren't controversial. He brings on a professional that has another point of view, and he's like, I can't believe this is so controversial. He can be naive. That's part of the humbleness of Joe Rogan that I can't stand personally. I had a friend like that, and it drove me nuts. He was always looking to other side the situation. And I appreciate it, and I think we need those guys. And I think that part of the reason Joe Rogan's done so well is because of that naivete and that expectation of people to do better than what they might do in some ways.
Yeah.
But every complaint I hear, the best complaint I get is he's said some controversial stuff and or had some controversial people on his podcast
Do
to
you
say
think
some
that's what I'm saying?
controversial
That the
stuff.
issue is controversy? Like, I have no problem with controversy. I'm fine with it. In fact, usually you take 2
I
points
want
and
to
whatever
okay,
filters
what
out.
is your issue with Joe?
I
Cuz
I just think
that's
it's
what I want to get at.
my issue with Joe Rogan all the way around is that like he seems to be like this is why when they people say like he's in over his head, this is what I mean by that. Where he's like, I don't get how discussing COVID is being controversial. I don't get how discussing
Okay.
trans issues is being controversial. It's like you're either an idiot or you're in over your head. It's just like just admit like
So
yeah, I'm well like look, I want to have controversial conversations and I want to hear sides and I want to hear multiple facets of this stuff. It's just like his
you
phrasing was just like
understand that he doesn't really do social media though, right?
he's surrounded by people that do social media. He's got people, he's got friends, he's got family. People be like, Joe, seriously, what the fuck, man? COVID? Like, do you even need social media to realize that COVID's a hot button topic? I mean, is that really a requirement? I mean, I'm not getting that.
It's not that discussing cope. Okay. It's where he says, I've got a guy on that says cloth masks don't work. He's a scientist and he tells us why. I don't see why that should be so controversial.
It's not controversial.
I
Well,
get that perspective.
mhm.
I get that it was. God damn it. That's the problem with talking to you mainstream people, Sean, is you keep being like, no, it's like that. I'm like, it wasn't like that 6 months ago, and I fucking heard you. Like, people forget what they felt and what position they were. Anytime you said masks are stupid in any capacity, you were an anti-masker, just as bad as an anti-vaxxer. It just faded. But I swear to God, this, that's the most frustrating thing is when I feel like I called it and other people are like, no, I always felt that way. It was big. And so, anyways, he has somebody on who
It's
talks about
but
vax.
wait. You did it again though. It's how you phrased it. It's not that the masks are stupid. It's how we wear them. But the thing is like what you said is the
The
narrative that keeps
masks
getting
that don't possibly fit right. The mask mandate.
bingo.
The telling everybody to wear mask. But I
Right.
can't just. Okay, so nobody gets into more nuance than Joe.
Mhm.
And even he gets slammed and they pull it out of context and say, see, he just said anybody who wears a mask is stupid. No, he said if you're driving in your car when it's freezing cold outside and you're wearing a mask and you're the only one in your car, I'm going to think you're stupid.
And I
That's
would agree
different
with
than
them.
saying
Yeah.
everybody who.
And I would agree.
This is every single fucking controversial issue they bring up about how dangerous Joe is.
Yeah. But
That's what they
the
do. There's
sound
always
bite
tons of nuance.
the sound bite which they use to promote themselves, where they do it on like social media, where they do it on Twitter, where they do it on YouTube, where they do it on any of these things, or masks are stupid. That's what they say ad nauseum. They're stupid and they don't work.
How many times could they pull that out of me saying, we've been talking right here. How much could they say pull it out of me saying masks are stupid?
Every single time
You
I
gotta listen to.
at least twice when I went, you just keep saying masks are stupid. That's not what you mean. What you mean is the way we wear them is stupid and it's harmful. That's the thing. So when you phrase it like that and especially repeat it, it's not just you, it's a ton of people that say that thing. They say it like
You're not
that.
making any sense to me here.
Okay.
Joe gets into the nuance and he gets bashed. You can't. I want somebody to honestly tell me how Joe Rogan is dangerous. That's what I can't get.
I don't
I
think
Nothing makes sense to me about him being dangerous. And if he's not dangerous, why the fuck do we keep talking about censoring him? He should not be censored at all,
I
which
don't
I
think it should
think you're
I
on
don't
the
th-
same page with me.
yeah, I don't think it should be censored. That's not what I'm getting at there. What I think is
But
what
that's what they want,
but I don't know. I'm not really sure who they is. But like
the powers that be.
What I think is happening with Rogan right now is precisely what needs to happen with Rogan right now. There needs to be a pushback against what he's saying to be able to either galvanize what he's saying as truth or to undo the narrative that he is proliferating. One of those things needs to happen. And the court of public opinion is taking him to task on it right now. And that's fine. Everyone should have that. I should have that. You should have that. The bigger the platform, the more scrutiny that you're going to get. And I don't see a problem with that. That runs completely congruent with free speech advocacy. You feel me?
Well, in theory, you've also got a bunch of paid for bots and shills and whatnot.
I'm
But
not
in
paid
theory,
for.
yeah.
I'm not bought for. And I've got
I know
issues with how
you're
he puts
not,
it.
but
Mhm.
yeah, okay, but come up with an issue on how he put something because you said that he got the myocarditis thing wrong. Ugh, I
Yeah,
am
I mean,
so bad at pronouncing stuff.
so I screwed that one up. I'm gonna admit
Myocarditis.
something. I'm just going off a soundbite on that one. So I am not.
Okay,
I'm not. That's
okay,
not a hill
but
I'll
this is
die
a
on.
perfect example regardless.
Mhm.
You said he got that wrong, see? And I said, okay, but he wasn't wrong. That first study is right, and the next study was flawed. It just came out that the first study was right, and the CDC is now going off of the first study, and the second study has been flawed. And that guy that was on there telling him he was wrong, correcting him in real time, was in fact wrong. And that information can be found on the CDC. They are worried about it in young children. The risk is high, and they don't want kids to be taking the vaccine under the age of 5 now. The CDC is taking that position.
Yeah, but he was
And
talking
Joe
about 12
was
to
not
17
wrong.
year olds. He was talking about 12 to 17 year olds, and the information that he was using was from like what
And CDC,
May of
okay,
2020. And so it was an older thing out of the Guardian that he used, if I remember correctly. And this was the
that was
information
an
updated.
accurate study. And then they had another study, which has been debunked now. And now the CDC is saying 5-year-olds and under should not, and that we are concerned about the risk for other children as well. This is where we need to get better prepared for, and I need to make more time to be able to hit these points.
That's fine.
But
So maybe we
he
should
was
back off
right
of that.
about that. But I want like what nobody can do is show me a clip and say he was wrong here and that they're actually right that he was wrong.
Well, the thing.
Nobody can show me a clip and say
Mm.
this is where he went
The
wrong.
reason no one can show you a
Find one
clip
for me.
the reason no one can show you a clip because he's not in the habit of making claims himself. His guests make the claims. And then he
What
becomes
is wrong with that? But why is CNN allowed to do that constantly? Why is MSNBC and Fox allowed to
it's
do
not
that
it's
constantly?
not about who's
And
allowed
why
to.
do we need to trust Joe to push back in all the right ways? Why does Joe have to be the
Ah,
arbiter of truth?
that's the thing right there. Okay, so CNN on normal media kind of sites, what they're going to do is they're going to be fact checked. They've got like responsibilities so they don't hit things like libel and slander.
Not true, but I get the idea, but not true. They get so much so wrong all the time. It's if they if it's at the behest of the establishment, they can be as wrong as they can be.
And
As long as it's at the behest of
who's
the
going to call out
establishment.
CNN if they get wrong? Who's going to do that?
Joe Rogan just did. You got to get that interview with
No,
Sean
no, no.
with Sanjay Gupta.
I'm talking about media to media. If CNN's wrong, who's going to call them out? Who's going to be the first? Who's going to be
The
like
alternative media
red?
constantly
Nah,
calls them out.
Fox will call them
Yes.
out. If CNN gets
Bullshit. No, bullshit.
really,
They attack each other in horseshit ways that don't matter. But when it comes to war, when it comes to a lot of the other issues, like, okay, some issues, some of them are better on one side than the other. But it's a fake attacking each other bullshit game. They don't give a shit. The real fight is between them and the alternative media. The real fight is between that dying dinosaur called the mainstream media and all of the alternative and smaller medias. That's the real fight. Fox and CNN pretend to hate each other, but they need each other. They don't actually ever like. Okay, the Syrian gas attack. It didn't freaking happen. There's no way it happened. It did not happen. They're never gonna fact check themselves on that. They're never gonna pay a price for bullshitting on that. They're never gonna pay a price for getting us into wars and wars and wars over
so
again.
you think
They're
Fox
never
and
gonna pay a
CNN
price for the big stuff.
so you think Fox and CNN both will put out the exact same misinformation or lie, and they will support each other.
Oftentimes, yes, and or they will back up their establishment. Like CNN will back up the Biden establishment and Fox will back up the Trump establishment, but it's all the same shit. What you won't get is some nuanced guy talking for more than 3 minutes about how vaccine technology, mRNA technology actually works.
Okay,
You won't
I
get
just
somebody
I just gotta laugh. Just hold on a second. Okay, so like CNN, all right, first off, is a the parent company of CNN is AT&T, right? Who basically just made
Mhm.
deals with freaking Greg Abbott, who is a staunch Republican and gets Trump endorsements, okay, for the Republican Party. The same company that built OAN as a complete counterweight to that. Now, that's a whole bunch of Orwellian shit where we have like false wars with one another, okay? Like, I get that kind of thing. But the establishment and what the reins of who is running CNN is AT&T. And AT&T is a corporate interest that finds its home and its refuge within the state of Texas. I know that because that's where I'm at. So they have a very like Republican ideal, a very conservative like leadership that guides that company, and they want corporate or excuse me, party sponsorship from a very conservative position. That's just like their redheaded stepchild. So I don't think that the Biden administration is giving CNN marching orders. I think AT&T is giving them marching orders to give a more diverse crowd for like consumerism. You know what I'm saying? So this is why I don't buy like, okay, well, this is the Biden administration like pushing to the left. AT&T's calling their shots. You see what I'm saying? Or do you totally disagree with that?
Yeah, but totally disagree because you appease your advertisers first and foremost. You
Hmm.
make money. That's the most important thing. And the advertisers, we've talked about many times, they're the most important thing to the news organizations. And
Hmm.
then you get clicks, you get ratings, you do whatever you can to get the most amount of people watching. They've got a
Hmm.
fear based model. Every one of the major networks, it's 100% fear based because they can't get you to click if it's not. You I don't even remember my point, but I don't agree that they fact check themselves on anything that I feel matters. I don't agree that they can be trusted on anything at all,
Hmm.
period. And I think that it's turning into more and more and more of a shit show every year,
Hmm.
and that's why they're dying. It's not because you can't like watch CNN whenever you want. They're on YouTube now. You can. They're dying because they're all bought and paid for and they're not giving us the news. They're giving us bullshit. Like when they say it looks like the Omicron variant is not as dangerous, they get disappointed. You can see it in the news anchors' faces, you know? They want the fear. They want to get people clicking, get people worried, get people riled up. They're dangerous. They're absolutely dangerous and abhorrent. They're the ones that
Hmm.
cause so much of they're the fuel for so much of the racism. They're the fuel for so much of the mob riots and shit that have been happening for many years now. They're the fuel for the fire of everything because they want people to be scared and pissed off at each other. And I don't see the alternative media that I like doing that at all.
So you don't think that
I see
anything
them
that
fact checking themselves too.
you don't think any of
What?
the media sources that you subscribe to rely upon.
Are stoking are stoking the fears, fanning the flames. No, I do not.
So that's why like you guys are like scared and terrified of a vaccine.
I'm not scared of a vaccine. I'm scared of the government being able to force me to inject something or take a pill or snort something or
Take it
or
of your own
or
volition.
eat something.
Take it of your own
I'm
volition.
not worried about vaccines. I can
Mhm.
take a vaccine and be fine. I'm so healthy, in my opinion, that I could get vaccinated 3, 4, 5 times in
So
a
then do
day
it.
and barely have a headache. Why would I do that?
Why not?
I have no reason to do that.
But you don't have a reason not to.
Why not? Because there is risk involved, and
Mhm.
I'm helping to support a pharmaceutical company. I think I'm the safest person I know to get a vaccine, but I have no reason to. Why inject toxins into your
Mhm.
body just because you can handle it?
So what would it take to convince you, or not convince you, but what would it take to have you change your tune on that?
On getting vaccinated,
Mhm. What
feeling
information
that I
would
was at some
would
okay.
it would you require that would disprove your position?
I don't know how to answer that. I can tell you that if I believed that I was at greater risk from getting sick and injuring myself from that disease or giving it to other people who are likely to be injured, and I trusted the company producing the vaccine,
Mhm.
then I would reconsider my position. I would never get a vaccine that the government's trying to force us to take just on principle, even if I trusted the vaccine and the company. I would never trust Moderna, Pfizer, or Johnson and Johnson. They have a massive, massive history of hurting people in a lot of different ways. Everybody agrees on that, except they think vaccines are different somehow, even though they have a history of all kinds of shit with vaccines too in other countries. I would not trust that I would be privy to get that I would be susceptible to catching a disease either. So I don't know how to answer that there is some information I could get because I'm in a different world where I can't imagine that information being real.
Mhm. Okay. So it's an
But
incredulity
it's
issue?
all a cost benefit analysis.
Mhm.
It's no, it's being right when everybody else is wrong. But it's all a cost benefit analysis.
You
And there's no cost benefit to me any more than there is Joe Rogan. Like, why should Joe Rogan get vaccinated? He's had COVID and he shows we now know that the natural immunity is much better than the vaccinated immunity.
yeah,
That's
but
in the
natural
science.
immunity is waning. Even you know that. You've even said that. Natural
Not
immunity is
nearly
waning.
not nearly as fast as not nearly as fast as it wanes for the vaccine. So you have to keep taking the boosters. And now a lot of people are saying that's enough boosters. Boosters end up destroying your immune system eventually. We can't keep boosting everybody. So
You
Joe
know what?
Rogan has no
Here's my expectation for what, or here's my hope, I should say, for where we stand on this. I am, should the next round of boosters come, and this might make you a little happy, I am going to be a little more apprehensive on the next round of the boosters for that reason too. Uh, I'm hoping that this is endemic at this point, like it's done its damage.
it definitely is. I
So,
mean, this is the
yeah,
definition of endemic. Whether or not we accept it as an endemic
yeah,
is one thing, but
and
it is the definition of an endemic.
I'm hoping things go that way, where we just kind of look at it like endemic, like the damage for the most part is done, and things. I mean, people are still
We
dying
figured
from it,
it
so
out. We
yeah.
don't put people on ventilators. That makes it worse. The ivermectin and the myo whatchamacallem do work. We now know that. The
The
doctors are starting to
monoclonal
employ
antibodies
other
or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
and thank you. Yes. They do work. That you could get kicked off of YouTube and Twitter and all that for that
Mhm.
recently, but now they're on board with the other stuff. They're moving in all the directions
Well, there's
so
still a lot of
controversial
pushback. There's
now
still a lot of pushback on ivermectin. The monoclonal
from the
antibodies.
behind idiots, but the doctors are doing it and the people it's the science is out and the things are changing in all the right ways and we now and I get like COVID hits and we're like shit what do we do and I get how some capitalists will take over some aspects of it that might not be so good and I get why we thought ventilators were a good idea. I get how we can like go way overboard causing more harm than good trying to like be extra careful and cautious. I do get all that. I also get the whole Bill Gates and Fauci conspiracy theory stuff too, and I think there is much truth to most of that. But the bottom line is, it does not behoove an infection to kill everybody. If the infection kills so many people, it doesn't travel well.
Yeah, the
And the
thing is though, is
idea
that that attitude gets entirely cavalier with people's lives. That's the kind of
it's
the
science,
problem.
it's the way it's a freaking fact. I'm not cavalier about people's lives. I'm cavalier about like no, it's quite the opposite. Like I want people to take better care of themselves. And I want the truth to be out there and I want people to make their own decisions. And I don't ever, ever, ever want to trust the government for like
Yeah,
vaccine passports and whatnot.
the problem is like, okay, why I say cavalier with people's lives is that okay, so if it's just an accepted fact of life that if a virus comes through, the annual kill a bunch of folks at virus, whatever, with Spanish flu, corona, whatever, okay. If the accepted like kind of like, well, shit, here it is. 10% of us are gonna die. Fuck. That sucks. Or like live with the long term effects of it. The rest of us will be fine. Here comes just another round of it. You have to ask yourself at what point in time, given our where we've progressed as a species or as an animal in society, with medicine, with science, with progress, at what point in time can we go? Actually, you know what? Nature, we don't have to lose 10% of us. Just ballpark figure.
But we're there now. We don't have to. We never did, but we're an incredibly unhealthy society. And in a lot of other societies that
Well,
are
that's
healthier,
American.
they had a much better outcome.
That's an American centric position, I would say.
Right, and a lot of other countries that are healthier had a much, much better outcome. Sweden did it right, and they got a lot of shit for supposedly doing it wrong, and yet they have some of the best outcomes in the whole world.
Yep.
They did it right, and they didn't do the lockdowns, and they didn't do the mask mandates, and they didn't do any vaccine
Well, they also
mandates.
had something else that we did not have. Do you know what you wanna take a
Go
guess?
on. I got a
M4A,
few guesses.
Medicare for all. That's how they did it. They've got a huge, much better medical infrastructure than we do, much more prepared to handle it than we do. They also have a culture and a mentality of, like, doing, oh, goddamn, what's the term? Preemptive care than
All
we
that's
do,
true. They also didn't put everybody on ventilators, and they also looked at the science with other alternative treatments as well. They did
right?
everything just looking at the science and no politics involved, from what I can tell. They
Yeah.
did it all right.
So there's
And
many
I'm
factors.
speaking from that perspective.
Mhm.
I want all of that here, even if it's impossible, even if it would never happen, even if we're not going to get any more ICUs, even if we're not going to open up more hospitals in the places that need hospitals. I still want to argue that point. I don't want to sit there and say, well, since we're all screwed, we better go ahead and think about getting vaccinated. I don't want to sit there and argue that point of like,
Yeah.
well, since toxins are everywhere, you're gonna get cancer anyway. So blah blah blah. I don't come from that. It's all fucked up. It's all overwhelming. It's all ridiculous. But I still want to argue from the right side, even if the right side, not politically right, but the correct side. Even if the correct side seems so impossible to ever get to that
I
point.
think that honestly though, like your perspective and your position on this would lead to a much more credence and credibility if it is phrased correctly without the soundbite of like things like "masks don't work," blah blah dot 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 on Twitter. If like there was like a
I
rephrasing, like dude,
maybe,
the
but
left
I don't
gets
think it travel well.
well, the left gets slammed for messaging all the time. We say defund the police, and everyone thinks that means like absolutely rip out all
Yeah,
police funding. I
that
mean, it's
broke
like,
my heart. That
yeah,
broke my heart. And then you had politicians coming in and literally doing it, and I feel like they were just like, "Okay,
yeah,
watch what happens," and
they totally
oh,
fucking
man.
missed the mark on that one, right? So that's the same thing. So if you're gonna push like,
But
okay, like a
how do you get it out there?
you
Like,
gotta
how do you
that's for the creative types to figure out.
refund the police money? Yeah, and that's freaking hard and or impossible to do, especially in the middle of a pandemic. You get drowned out. Like I sit there and post 15 different ways about masks, and then I finally just say masks don't work. I get 100 people calling me an asshole, but I actually get people talking about it at that point, you
Mm,
know? So yeah, if I'm like some suit wearing, career driven, old school scientist or doctor type, I'm gonna be very, very careful about things.
mhm.
Now, today, and if I'm Joe Rogan, I will be too, as I believe he is.
But the thing is, it's like the
Today,
moment
as
you
me
say something like masks don't work, I know in my head that they do, even if it's only at a
and yet
10%,
and
15%
then you
capacity.
come onto my Facebook feed that you saw that and you start arguing with
But
me.
the thing is I won't. I'll argue you. Yeah, I will because that's the kind of
So
guy
will
I
a
am.
bunch of other people.
But
So
there's
will a
also
bunch of other
but
people,
a lot
and
of
we'll
people that
get
you're
people
trying to
discussing.
but you want to reach these folks. So if that's the thing is, it's like on its face, this
I
dude
do.
says masks don't work. Yeah, fuck that guy, and off I go. That's what's going to happen with a
I've been
good
doing
chunk
this
of
a long
people.
time.
Hmm.
I've been doing this such a long time. I reach a lot of people. I have figured out a way that I feel like I can reach the most
Hmm.
people. It's gonna piss off some people. I might be doing it wrong. I might be totally ego driven and thinking I'm doing it the right way when I'm not. And I'm sorry if that's the case. But the way I word stuff, the inflammatory, provocative way that I do things, which is not nearly as bad as other people, I don't
Yeah.
think, like that go this route. I do think that I'm finding a good medium. But I do know that if it's not at all provocative, I can't get a conversation going. And I do know that if
So
you're
you're
way,
relying.
way bigger, you can
So you're relying on
go.
the provocation for the messaging.
Yes, and the bigger you are, the less you need to rely on that provocation. Joe Rogan can't be provocative. You
That's
know,
something to
he
consider for sure. Yeah, I'm wondering because like even like let's say for example like growing this channel, I'm like I can't just rely on an algorithm in hopes for the best that people just stumble across. So, but at the same time, I don't want to be disingenuous and like clickbait my way into relevance.
yeah, I
So,
and
like, I'm
I
like,
do mean that masks don't work the way we're doing them. I mean that, but I know the nuance can't fit into the title, right? And how do we do that and grow? And there's a point at which you have to transition into less and less provocation and more nuance within the title or whatever you're pushing,
Mhm.
and then you're going to have to pay for the sins of your past. But if we don't talk about anything controversial, what the hell are we doing here? There's plenty of other people. If we just agree with the narrative and that's just the way it is, then who's going to listen to us? You know,
Yeah.
why would they even come to us?
Well, yeah, we need to test these back and forth, but yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. I think conversations that definitely need to be had. I hate using those stupid buzzwords like the marketplace of ideas and all that kind of bullshit. Like it just sounds so fucking tired. But like, yeah, I get it. There needs to be some intellectual honesty and accountability for the way that we speak to one another on the matter. There needs to be an acknowledgement of like, you know what? Sometimes messaging, especially from my camp and from my kin, is absolute fucking garbage. So, at the behest of like, in the better interest of actually having an honest conversation, not just because I said it's honest, but like actually partaking in an honest way and saying like, masks are bullshit if you don't, comma, if you don't wear them right, needs to be something that goes into the habit and something that just becomes just like an automatic way of discussing these things. Because I think you
You also got to understand that when you're in your bubble of the masks work, and that is
Mhm.
your bubble, and I am in a bubble of the masks don't work, being in the natural health,
How much do you think
then
hold on, how much do you think I think how that what percentage, what threshold do you think I believe masks work?
I think you're probably at the 55 to 60% mark.
Wrong.
And I think I'm probably at the like 30% mark. Where are you at?
I'm more like at the 20 of efficacy. It's like
Okay.
the big stuff.
But you're
It's like
in your social
globs of
bubble.
phlegm on me, actual spittle hitting my face. That's kind of where I'm at. Like that's where I think that
Okay.
you need to work. Does that make
And
sense?
in yes. And so I would say a year ago in the liberal bubble, you would never say masks don't work, even if you didn't think they work. You would not appreciate that phrasing at all. Um, even if you don't believe they work. But if you were on the right, or excuse me, I'm thinking conservative. But if you're on the anti-mask side
Mhm.
and you think masks actually might work 60% of the time, but I'll be goddamned if the government's gonna make me or my kids wear masks.
Mhm.
You know, so let's say you're the 20% guy on the
I'm sorry,
left,
but
and
that's
I'm
the
I'm the
dumbest fucking thing, by the way. Like,
Mm,
just I hate that
I don't know
shit.
about that, but okay. All right.
No,
Well,
just principle for the face of principle. It's just like, okay, hey, you know what? This works. Do it. You should. Well, I'm not doing it because you told me to. And it's like such a petulant fucking move, man. Really? Like,
I am so that guy. I don't
why?
trust being told what because I feel like the only time anybody pushes anything is for their own interest. And I don't believe that the United States says we want to make sure you're healthy. I don't think that's in the
I want
interests
to
of the
push
United
you to
States.
be a better person. Just let's say for
I don't
argument.
think okay, so if you're telling me I should wear a mask and you're giving me good arguments, I might wear that mask.
Okay,
The
thank you.
moment the government says it's time to wear a mask, I'm like, "Sorry, Sean, you're wrong."
Hmm.
And that's where I come from, and that comes across as very petulant in that way to people.
Hmm.
But I'm like that because I
Okay.
feel that the moment a
So
large institution
an old frickin' hat, this is what I say all the time. Your right to wave your fist ends at someone else's face, right? You have every right
Mhm,
because the moment you hit someone, you violate them, right? So concerning the mask, I
right,
won't go into the fucking vaccine, but just on the mask thing, right? You have every right in the world to COVID. Have that sucker. Make love to it. Make sweet, sweet love. Take it to the drive-in. Whatever, man. You've got every right to that you could possibly have. Okay? Marry that shit. Buy it
okay,
freaking Taco Bell. I don't care, right? It's yours. Enjoy it. Do what you want with it, right? But if you hit someone with that, you have then violated them, right? And the reason why you're not going to do that, or why you are going to be in a position where you can violate someone else, is because someone told you to put that fucking thing on, so you protect yourself and your virus that you want from hitting other people, and you'll be like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm going to keep and stay and maintain in a position of violating other people simply because I was told not to violate. That's the same logic. I will violate someone because someone told me not to. That doesn't make any sense. If someone says like don't like you can't violate people, I mean, you have to agree that there are at least some valid laws out there, there are some valid rules within a social contract. You have to agree to some level, like, yeah, you know what? Not everyone's going to violate that, or excuse me, not everyone's going to like agree to these things. Some people are going to run around violating people of their own volition because they just don't give a shit. They're fucking sociopaths. They don't give a fuck about social contract. They're just in it for themselves and they don't give a fuck what the hell happens to anyone. Then the government comes in and goes, you know what, dude? Like, you can't run around just doing whatever the fuck you want to do. Like, you're violating everyone for your freedom and putting negative freedoms on other people. So now, because of the honor system, which you decided you didn't want to freaking partake in and just do it on, like, seriously, wear a fucking mask. Now we gotta make you do the fucking thing because you weren't responsible enough in the first place to just do it of your own volition. So I can understand that. So, like, when people are like, well, because they told me to, and then they cross their arms and hold their breath, and petulant child fucking starts rearing its ugly head in some Freudian fucking way. I don't understand that. Like, why just on its face of the principle of the
I
matter?
thought I just explained it. What do you mean you don't understand it? I get your perspective.
Mhm.
Do you still not get mine?
Well, I'm talking about
When
like
the
as far as like
government
a
tells me what to do, I
mhm.
generally don't think it's in my best interest, and I am inclined to do the opposite and or not do it
How could
for
it
good
benefit?
reason,
Okay,
historical precedent.
let's go with the mask. How could wearing a mask benefit the United States government?
The governments, plural, have a history of
I'm
testing out compliance.
I'm just.
So if go ahead.
You think this is a compliance move? You think this is a control, like a power grab?
I think a whole lot of this was yes.
Really? Is it just
Yes,
from historical precedent, or is there actually anything else that would like suggest that this was a power grab?
both. I don't I want to wrap it up and I feel like that's a separate podcast because we could talk for hours on
Oh,
that,
that was
but
a
I
juicy one. I got you right there, buddy. Okay, well, I can we could put a pin in that one.
that's deep stuff, but I okay, other than compliance,
Hmm.
a tribal flag is very important. When you, as a political party, this is probably the biggest in my opinion, but I might be wrong on how much this plays. But when you're a political party, what you want to do is divide and what's it called? Your the people that put you in power. Your no, I want
Constituents.
to say constituents, but
Yeah, constituents.
there's another word like your foundational people that like vote for you and
Your
stuff. There's
your
another
party
word that's
base.
better.
Your voter
Your
base.
base.
Yeah, yeah, your base. Okay.
Your base. You want to reduce the size of the base you need, and you want that base to be loud and proud. You want that base to have a huge voice, but you don't want to
Reduce.
have to appease.
Why would you
You
want to
don't want
reduce?
to have to. Yeah, I'm trying to tell you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You don't
Sorry.
want to have. You don't want to have to appease to 51% of the population. What
Mhm,
you want is to appease to the smallest amount of percentage that can still keep you in office. Look at how Hitler retained power or got power. This
mhm,
is how you do it. You don't want to make 55% of the population happy because you can't do it. Not what you need is 10% angry and ready to fight for you to the death
mhm,
and get everybody else in line in all the important points. So the mask is a very, very big tribal flag that says, I'm liberal, you're conservative, you want to kill people, I don't, you're bad, I'm good, period, point blank. And I can very much see how politicians could very much enjoy that benefit. It absolutely solidifies their base. It galvanizes their base. It motivates their base. It separates the tribes. And if politicians could, I think they do this kind of stuff all the time, and they do in subtler ways. But to have all of your voters wear something on their body that says, I'm voting for you, or I'm on this side of the fence, or whatever, that's huge politically speaking.
I guess I don't see any difference of wearing a mask being any different than wearing clothes, wearing a seatbelt, any of these kinds of things. I don't look at this as a power grab in the interest of public safety. I think this is something that we did even 100 years ago with Spanish flu. People wore masks back then. To me, it just seems like common sense. especially when you've got
And a
motherfuckers.
lot of people in the city wore masks. Before the mandate went into effect, a whole lot of people in all the major cities, especially the blue states, but the city folk were wearing masks like crazy before anybody made them do it.
Mhm.
And people out in the rural areas were way less likely to wear masks. And I
When
travel through both all the time.
when I lived in
Wh-
Paris, a very common thing that you would see, especially amongst the Asian community, was how much they wore masks. And it was kind of like the first time
Yeah,
I'd really saw
when
it,
they felt they needed to.
but this is pre-COVID. So
Right, when they felt when they had a tickle in the throat or a sinus, or nasal drip or whatever,
I think
they would wear the
honestly,
mask.
I would say that it seemed almost like an automatic thing, like it was a cultural move because a lot of I went not
Um,
all of them, but dude, I mean, Paris gets 80 million tourists going through it a year, if I remember that figure correctly. 80 million a year go through Paris on a yearly basis, and I lived there off and on like 7 years. And pretty much from the Asian community, you saw a lot of motherfuckers wearing masks, and it was a pretty big thing. And much to the chagrin of the locals there that lived there, because they're like they looked at it, and the viewpoint was, what do you think my city is dirty? Do you think you're going to catch diseases here? Do you think like, well, why are you doing that? Like they looked at it like you're insulting me by
and
wearing
I'm on
that.
that side too. I do
Mhm,
think there's a whole lot of, like, I'm gonna keep like Joy Behar's like, "I'm gonna keep wearing masks." And she's not wearing a mask in her studio. She's talking to a whole bunch of people. She's okay there, but when she goes out to the common folk and the poor folk, she doesn't want to breathe their
mhm,
spittle. I
mhm.
think there's a class issue with this whole mask thing. And I think the masking has a
Yeah.
lot of very poor dynamics. I think it's bad for the children. I think it's incredibly bad for the environment.
Mhm.
That was the first reason I got real anti, actually. I forgot about that. Before I did my match testing, I got really like, wait a minute, you guys are getting all these disposable plastic masks. I'd rather more people die than us like keep destroying our environment in the long run. I
Mhm.
don't know what these masks are going to do, but it can't be good. I would rather like risk personally, and a lot of people are going to disagree with this, but I would rather risk more human deaths than degradation to the environment that may have long-term ramifications that we're not aware of.
Oh, are you talking about
So
like people
I
throwing masks on the streets and stuff and the littering
they're all
issue and
ending up in the oceans and shit,
yeah, yeah.
right? Like,
Mhm.
who knows what it's gonna
Yeah,
do?
that's an issue
It's a
that needs to be
huge,
addressed.
huge, huge issue,
Yeah.
and people will
That I've got no disagreement with you on that one. That shit's gross and like
you
I'm like,
can't
wow.
mandate.
Yeah.
There's too many reasons not to do it. You
Mhm.
can't mandate. I don't think you can vaccine mandate, and I don't think you can mask mandate, and I don't think you should judge people for not wanting to do it because they
So
might have good reasons. And
let's
that's indicative of when you see the city population mask up without being mandated and the country population not mask up because they don't need to. It makes sense. You're in a
okay.
tighter population. Makes
So
sense.
I'm gonna give you the parting shot so we can wrap this up. We've been at it 2 hours now. And I think that you got to get going. So I'm going to ask one question as a parting shot, and then we'll go for
I
our
have a
separate.
closing question too, by the way, to set up the next podcast we do. So
Perfect. That
I need
sounds
to
good.
end with that if you don't mind. Okay.
Okay. So what do you think in response to the pandemic of COVID? What do you think the position and the steps taken by the United States government? What should those have been? What should their
All
response
right.
to a pandemic of them? What should they have
Tell
done?
everybody to get healthy and what you need to do to get healthy and start studying the science of what health is in this case. For instance, we found out very quickly that vitamin D plays a huge issue, right?
Would you have listened?
That's the first thing to do. Yeah.
They're
If
telling
they're
you,
not telling me what I listen to everybody and then I make up my own mind. So it's not like they said don't wear a mask and I was like, I'm never wearing a mask again, but I lean towards, wait a minute, I'm gonna look into this.
okay, not specifically, but
Anyways,
just not so we don't go down a rabbit hole of the specifics of it, but you think that the United States government should have promoted healthier lifestyle over anything else, and that should have been the only step
I
taken?
think first and foremost, when they realized there was a pandemic, they should say, we don't know what this is going to do, but we want everybody to get healthy. This
Mhm,
seems to be affecting the people with the core morbidities much more. They had that data very early on. And
mhm,
we want you to make sure you're taking good care of yourself. And exactly what Fauci said in the very beginning, he said, don't worry about the like the what's the word? Don't worry, don't do the weird stuff. Just take good care of yourself. Don't smoke, exercise, and be vigilant and stay abreast of the news and the science that's coming out.
Mhm.
That we're going to keep looking at the science, that the science is going to evolve, and that we're going to do our best to get it right. Number two, Medicare for all. And number three, and this is the most important thing, they just keep sharing what they're learning with an open mind.
Mhm.
Just the CDC should just be publishing blog style like what the new science is saying and what we're diving into. And just put that out to everybody
So
as they can easily do.
more transparent, more
And
accessible
admit
dialogue.
when you made a mistake, like, yeah, we thought masks would work. Turns out cloth masks don't work. N95 works if they fit. Well, like it's okay to say that and admit you were wrong and not act like you never said that.
Oh,
It's
I could agree
okay
with
to
that.
say there's 100 other instances like that where in
Mm.
the heat of the moment, it was like, "You're on this side or you're not." I want, like, Fauci saying, "I am science." He didn't say that, but he insinuated, like, "You question me, you're questioning science." You're supposed to question science. I want to
Yeah.
see the government questioning
Did
science
he really
right
say
in
that? I
front
didn't
of
see
us.
that. I didn't see it. I've never
Yes,
seen him say it.
he says specifically, I mean, I can't quote him, but it was very close to this. He was saying, um, when somebody said a lot of these people are disagreeing with you, Fauci, he said, "Well, these people that are disagreeing with me are disagreeing with science," or something like that. It was extremely close to that. So the big joke around the alt media is Doctor Science. He's now called Doctor Science.
Okay.
Um, but in the beginning, he said, "Don't wear a mask. That's stupid. Don't worry, and there won't be a vax mandate. We can't do that. If a vaccine works, there's no need to anyways." He said all the right stuff in the beginning. He
Mhm.
still never knew his ass from a hole. Like he doesn't know how you figure out if somebody has COVID. Like the man actually doesn't understand how the testing works.
Yeah.
There's so many other huge holes in his knowledge. We're going down a rabbit.
Yeah.
So, what was your question? I
My
forget.
question is just like, if you were the United States, what steps would
Okay,
you
yeah.
take to prevent
So
prevent the spread?
the three things, first and foremost, tell everybody what they should already know and push it down their throats the right way. Get healthy, take care of yourself. Number two is to
Mhm.
be extremely transparent about what they're figuring out and whatnot. Number three is that is what they should have done.
You clipped out, but
They should be doing mass
I'm assuming you said
Medicare
Medicare
for
for
all.
all. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah, number three.
Okay.
Yeah, so they that's how they should have handled it. What do you think of that?
I don't have any disagreement with that. I think there should be a little bit more to it, but
I think that moreness would have come out in the science if we were being honest.
I think understand this, that a lot of my perspective, and I know this will make a lot of people mad, but you lived here for a substantial amount of time. I have little faith in Southerners, and just in general, and I think you can understand why. you
I
know,
get that. I
uh,
I have more faith than I used to, but I still totally get that.
typically the mentality and the mantra of "it's not my job, it's not my responsibility, it's not my this, it's not my that, it ain't my problem. Fuck off, me and mine, go to hell. You fuck up." I don't, that just kind of like general. Unless
I used to feel exactly the same way you feel, and I totally get that.
it's a bunch of people to me that see that their civic duty, they understand civic duty when it comes to going overseas and killing people, but
Right.
taking a shot is tyranny. But going overseas and
Let
killing
me
people,
switch hats for this. I'm switching hats, Sean,
eh,
and I just need to talk a little bit more like this for
you're
this to get you to
USA.
kind of see the
So
yeah, yeah.
I don't trust the results of a lot of the educational system. I think people just stopped learning. I think a lot of people just stopped like looking out
And
for
people
each
don't like
other.
to learn.
Yeah, and I think people
Yeah.
stopped looking
Yeah.
out for each other. I think tribalism plays a big part in that. You kind of alluded to a little bit of tribalism earlier. I think they're like, well, I'm just going to take care of my own. I can't possibly take care of everyone, so I'll just take care of these people. We're going to set up our walls and our boundaries. Don't anyone pop our bubble. Like, it's like there's a lot of shit going on, and I try to imagine myself as a leader in politics or something, like trying to like, fuck, man. Okay, I'm of the belief that doing this kind of thing would be the best benefit, that everyone should do it because I don't want to see motherfuckers die, dude. Like, and I get like, yeah, I don't want to see people die because of the economy, whatever. but at the same time, like, from an empathetic approach, like, I wanna see people, like, not have long COVID, and I wanna see them be okay, and I wanna see as many people not, like, with their dying breath go, "Shit, I wish I took the vaccine," like, just crap like that, and, like, it's like, "Oh, your stubbornness, if I could just get that out of your fucking head of how stubborn you're being about this shit," you know? And so I'm like, "Well, what would you do? How do you" because in this instance with you I don't think where your results are 100% correct, but I think there would be no denying that you have satisfied due diligence in your own mind. That you have taken steps to be as, like, diligent
Yeah,
about
I'm
this
not
as you can.
lackadaisical about this.
Right,
I'm not
okay.
not taking it serious.
So you and I would have to, like, tit for tat on data measures to do this, but I think your regular everyday Joe Schmo guy is just reiterating talking points. It's just
They're
like,
going off of their gut. Hold on, they're going off of their gut, and then they use the talking points that agree with their gut feeling to substantiate and justify their argument.
I said earlier, I had this motherfucker boldface say any deference to an expert was logically fallacious because it was an appeal to authority and completely undermined free thinking, which is exactly personal incredulity when it boils down to it. Because you cannot possibly be an expert epidemiologist, a virologist, any of this shit. You can't be all of these things. So at some point in time, you need to defer to an expert. There are people in this field, they have accredited educations, they have experience in their field, they're what they're doing. The far more than you and me have is, like, let's just say for the argument, the layman. Okay. And so if you're, like, looking at it to every single one of these people is an expert, and by logical definition, like by the fallacy of logic, deferring to them is an appeal to authority, therefore listening to anything an expert has to say is therefore fallacious and runs completely counter to free thinking. Then this guy continued to go on to say that I just don't want anyone to tell me what to do. And he tells me this on fucking media platforms. And he doesn't get the inconsistency, the double standard that's at play here, and the fact that the only thing that he's going to listen to is shit that he's already biased to believe in the first place. And that there's nothing that you could do to undo any of that. There's nothing you could tell this guy. It's an unfalsifiable proposition that he's laid out before us, that he is pushing and propagating upon media platforms, and then goes to listen to any of this is fallacious and you're stupid and I am a free thinker. And I'm like, dude, this is so fucking riddled with problems right now. So if I were a leader and then I was like, this is what I'm having to deal with, this is what's proliferating social media, this is what's all over Twitter and TikTok and YouTube, and all these motherfuckers are doing this kind of thing with that kind of logic, informing their choices about how they do this, this is a fucking nightmare. So what the hell do I do about this kind of thing? Well, the best thing anyone's got is a fucking mandate, I guess. Because what else are you going to do? They won't do it on their own
I
volition.
People will do what's best for them on their own volition without propaganda.
That is so not true. That is so not
Yeah,
true. They're going to
that's where we're
do
gonna
what they
have to differ.
they're going to do what they think is best for them, what they believe is best for them. But if you think that there's 360
They're gonna
million
get it
Americans
right
out
more
there,
often than you think.
you think there's 360 million Americans right now that have sound epistemology on what they believe and why. You really believe that.
No, what I really believe is if you say you need to wear a mask because of this, that, and the other, and you're being honest and you say why masks don't work as well as we like them to, but why they do work, then I think you're gonna have people that should wear masks generally gravitate towards wearing masks and tribalize with the people that wear a mask and appreciate the mask in that way. And you're gonna have people that don't want to wear a mask often for good reason, and you'll have some in between that are doing it wrong, but you're generally gonna see just like you see how people vote for stuff that makes sense for them. Like, I get why rural America wants religion in their lives. I can't stand religion, but I get it
Mhm.
now. I understand that now. I understand how that benefits them and not people like you and me. And they have all kinds of reasons, like because I don't want to go to hell and stuff. And you and I would both say that's not the real reason you're being religious, but there are good
Yeah.
reasons. People are going to gravitate towards what behooves them. If you get rid of the propaganda, they'll do this more easily. They will get it Right, even if they have all the wrong reasons to back them up. That's what I believe, that's my experience, and I do think I have a lot of faith in people to get things right, and I have a lot less faith in our government, and I think while you would admit that nobody should have a lot of faith in our government, I think you have more faith in our government and less faith in the people compared to me.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I have less faith in people um, overall.
And on that note, I'd like to close with my question.
Okay, and so this
And
will be
I used to totally have no faith in people too, by the way, so I appreciate that. So, yeah, my question for the next episode, you ready?
all right. Let's do it.
What is the very, very worst thing that somebody can do? Would you like to guess first, or should I just tell you?
The very worst thing that someone could do. The very
Any
worst.
individual or group of people, what's the very worst thing that somebody can do?
Are you talking about in? Well, go for it. I because you could be talking about like the
You might
realm.
say rape a baby, you might say something totally heinous like that, but what I say is go to war, start a war, get into war, push a
Mhm,
war, propagandize for war. You're going to have all the worst aspects of everything anybody does with war. War has got every single thing wrong with anything anybody could do. You know, it's got all the rape you'd want, it's got all the racism, it's got all the bombs, the annihilation,
mhm,
the taking people's rights away. It's got every single thing that's wrong with everything all rolled into one.
mhm.
War is the very, very, very worst thing that anybody can do, period, point blank. And I I want to get into war on the next episode, not just Ukrainian, but I want to get into like what war really means and how easily we get into it and how much we always freaking justify the worst atrocity we can do. That's what I really want to dive into next time. You up for that?
I could do that for the next one. I to answer your
All right.
question just with a little bit of thought because I was thinking in general terms like coercion or whatever that kind of thing. You
Right.
had more of a specific one. Honestly, I think that probably the war is very much up there. No disagreement there. I'm not sure if it's the top one, but honestly, I think is to fill someone's mind with absolutely unprovable fucking nonsense, such as
Oh, you mean how we get to war?
yeah. I think the seed that begets that is the worst kind. That's why, like, I'm a big proponent. Or I'm anti-religious in that stance. I think it primes people for conspiracy. If you buy if you buy the answer that religion has to offer you for perhaps the biggest question, that the most meaningful, impactful question that any human being would ever have, what such as like, why are we here? What is our purpose? Like all that stuff. If you were to buy that one, you basically, if you die by that score, you'll fall on every one that follows after that. If you believe something, if you have belief before evidence rather than evidence and then belief, you're primed to you'll buy anything. And I think that's where, like, yeah, if you didn't require evidence on that, you're not going to require evidence for other shit. And I think that will get you to war. I think that's the
Our
root.
answers, I think, are very, very telling on, our basic ideology with everything we're talking about.
Yeah,
What do you think of calling the title? Like, you can change the name of the YouTube video after you post it, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like this live video. Yeah, okay.
Why?
What do
What
you
does it
think
say?
about I don't remember, but what do you think it should I think it should start saying Sean and Michael debate, period, period, period. And then every time you were done, you should go in and change it and like debate Ukraine or debate vaccines and masks and this
Yeah.
and that or you know, and I think that'd be the best title every single time, especially I think at least for a while we're gonna keep kind of going all over the place to a
Hmm.
degree. So I think the title would kind of like we're not trying to get to the heart of something or figure something out. We are debating and sharing what we know and seeing where we fall the way we want more and more people to do.
Yeah.
And and openly and not getting mad at each other too much and whatnot. I think the title would basically say that if it says Sean and Michael debate this, that, and the other. I think that might be a good idea for getting the right kind of clicks for not being too sensational, but
Sure.
still
Why
being
not?
like, oh shit, they're talking about this. You know what I mean? I think it's good
Subjects
balance.
covered,
So
X, Y, Z, whatever, that kind of
yeah,
thing. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, yeah. Just a
Yeah,
thought.
yeah, when it gives me the prompt to title this thing, I'm like, this shit. I type something out real quick.
Mm,
with the intent of going back in it and revising
sure.
that. So, all right,
Yeah.
dude, this
Well,
was rad. I love
thank
this.
you very much.
Thank you very
I'm really
much.
loving it too.
Yeah, man,
I'll talk
this
to you
is awesome.
soon.
Yeah,
All
I'm
right.
gonna call you after this just for a couple of things. So,
Cool.
all right. Anyway,
Cool.
take care. Peace. We'll talk soon.
All right.
All
You
right.
too.
Bye.
Bye.